His entire class was suddenly ripped away to a mysterious new world. Every student was blessed with legendary, god-tier powers. But then there's him, stuck with a pathetic skill called absorption. Everyone mocked him and called his ability completely worthless. Left for dead in the shadows, he was never supposed to survive. But now, he hungrily devours every skill he can find. Every stolen power becomes a lethal weapon in his hands. Each soul he consumes fuels a terrifying, unstoppable evolution. He is the ultimate end that no one can escape, a monster destined to swallow every new beginning. When the legendary heroes are turned into nothing more than hunted prey, who on earth is left to step up and save them? Nakatani's journey kicks off with a massive, unexpected twist. Gasping for air, an exhausted Nakatani looks up and witnesses pure chaos. A voice screams from the crowd to stay alert, because the horde just keeps closing in. Our hero spins around, his eyes wide with absolute terror. Another scream rings out as the monsters swarm directly toward the helpless civilians. Naoki Miyamoto barks a command, sending the beasts charging forward. With a single lightning-fast swing of his blade, he decapitates them instantly. His allies are stunned, wondering how many he just slaughtered as Nakatani spins toward the commotion. He spots Onizuka winding up to smash a massive boulder. Izuka hurls the heavy stone with bone-shattering force. The crowd screams as Onizuka displays the overwhelming power of the ogre. "God!" Minace shrieks, her voice cutting through the chaos. She clasps her hands together as a blinding light explodes above her. Nakatani reaches out his hand and issues a cold challenge. "Come on!" he yells, driving his sword through the beast's spine to end it. CMC gasps for air, staring in pure horror at the monster's corpse. His hands tremble violently as he glares ahead, ready for anything. Nakatani lets out a furious curse just as a voice calls out from the mob. The crowd roared, crediting his insane, raw power for the victory. Onizuka kicked back and told Naoki to ditch these losers and hunt the boss. But Naoki insisted on following the plan to the letter. He knew it was easy, but Onizuka still screamed at the crowd to pick up the pace and crush their enemies even faster. Suddenly, Minase shouted out, asking Onizuka and Naoki if they finally wanted to take a breather. She's convinced a quick rest is the only way they'll survive the brutal fights ahead. The question was popped, the deal was struck, and just like that, the team finally stood down. "A break?" someone in the crowd cheered, their voice filled with pure relief. Nakatani grabbed his bottle and started chugging water like his life depended on it. He sat all by himself, keeping a cold distance from the rest of the group. His mind drifted back, realizing just how many years had slipped through his fingers. Time had flown by, but the truth remained. They were summoned to this strange new world. Up until that moment, Nakatani believed his life was completely ordinary. He was just another average high schooler living a mundane life. As the school bell chimed, his only goal was to sprint home as fast as possible. He was dying to fire up his brand new game, but then everything changed in an instant. A sharp snap echoed through the room, drawing his eyes straight to the floor. He froze, staring in shock at the massive fracture splitting the ground beneath him. That terrifying fissure opened wide, ready to consume everyone in the room. A blinding white-hot radiance exploded from the depths, engulfing them completely. The entire classroom floor shattered as a pillar of light blasted our hero into the unknown. Our hero's head spins as he screams, "What the hell is going on?" Just as the entire class is ripped away, they suddenly materialize in a massive field, surrounded by a crowd of staring strangers, while our lead stands there in total shock. A man wearing a golden crown erupts with joy, shouting, "We did it," before giving them a grand royal welcome. Chaos explodes as the students scream in fury, demanding to know where their school went and why they've been kidnapped. One student lunges forward, begging to be sent back home immediately because he can't afford to be late. Between dead phones and panicked cries of "This sucks," Naoki's voice thunders over the crowd, demanding everyone shut up. They have to uncover the truth, and that means interrogating this mysterious man right now. He pivots toward the crowned figure, his eyes sharp as he demands answers to his questions. That's Nakatani for you, our hero thinks, realizing the student council president is already taking charge. With just a single word, the president's sheer charisma settles the boy's nerves and restores his focus. Eventually, the panic subsided as they began to uncover the shocking truths of this mysterious realm. This land is a massive tapestry of diverse cultures, and they've been summoned to save a desperate empire on the brink of collapse. Suddenly, a glowing status window flickered into existence right before his eyes. Nakatani Uto, Level 1, Special Skill, Absorption. Staring at the screen in disbelief, Uto wondered if the system was glitched, but he soon realized every single summon possessed a unique, godlike power. Absorption, he muttered, questioning what this mysterious ability could even do, just as a commotion erupted in the crowd. The onlookers gasped in shock as a massive, jagged gash ripped through the stone pillar right above a soldier's head. With one lightning-fast strike, Naoki cleaved the massive pillar clean in two, sending the crowd into a frenzy as they hailed him as their true savior. Akain rushed over to the president, throwing her arms around him and cheering that Naoki would always be the absolute best, while our MC watched in silence. It was clear now. Everyone held a unique trump card, and Naoki Miyamoto's was the legendary heroic skill. Every student was gifted with insane abilities, from devastating magic to god-tier martial arts. With superhuman enhancements and elite skills, it's no surprise they were hailed as legendary heroes. But compared to those monsters, our MC was stuck with a pathetic skill that just pulls random objects toward him. The others cornered him, sneering at his useless power and calling him a total weakling. Nakatani glared at him, convinced that this loser wouldn't survive a single week in this world. He couldn't stand their pitying stares. He refused to let a weak power define his fate. He vowed to give it his all. But suddenly, the commander's voice thundered out, "Onizuka!" Hadn't he warned them that provoking just one beast would alert every monster in the area? They needed to stay calm and focused. But Onizuka just snapped at him to shut his mouth. He didn't deserve that kind of disrespect, especially since none of this was his fault. He didn't need orders. One more command, and he'd kill the guy, even as the head knight screamed for him to let go. Arguments have to wait, because someone is screaming for the squad to get on their feet. The monsters are closing the gap fast, and they need to brace for impact. The MC looks over his shoulder and sees a stampede of beasts heading right for them. Naoki draws his steel and instantly carves through 3 enemies. He finishes those monsters with a single devastating blow. He bellows that they can win this, rallying the troops to follow him into the fray. While the rest of the group is busy slaying beasts, Nakatama stops in his tracks. Katani realizes that even in the heat of battle, he's still an outsider. He knows he doesn't fit in, but he's determined to prove his worth. Without warning, the beast strikes. It launches a lethal ambush from his blind spot. Our protagonist is caught totally off guard. He barely raises his blade in time to parry the crushing blow. He shoves the creature back and roars for it to get lost. Suddenly, Nakatani's blade shatters into 1,000 jagged fragments. The monster towers over him, letting out a chilling, mocking laugh. It lunges forward, desperate to finish the job. Just then, a loyal ally dives into the heat of battle. They leap to his rescue and slice the beast into bloody ribbons. Everything was ripped into jagged pieces right by Nakatani's side. He was trembling uncontrollably, his body finally collapsing in a wave of relief. His mind was screaming that surviving this was absolutely impossible. He was completely spent, his strength vanishing when he needed it most. A beast blurred past him as he shrieked a desperate warning to Minas. "Minas, look out! Nakatani, move!" he roared with every bit of air in his lungs. He scrambled after the creature, but the world was moving way too fast. It all happened in a heartbeat, leaving him totally paralyzed. He didn't have the power left to deliver a single crushing blow. With no other choice, he lunged forward and shoved Manase out of the death zone. He throws himself out of the beast's lethal path just in time. It was a desperate last-second gamble to stay alive. Manase screams out Nakatani's name in pure terror. The monster lunges at the defenseless Nakatani with blinding speed. The creature slams into him with a bone-shattering impact. Everything goes black as Nakatani spirals into unconsciousness. Paralyzed, he questions his life, wondering if he was always meant to be the loser. A voice yells to abandon him, but Manase refuses to budge. He risked his life for her, but now he's trapped by an incurable dark curse. The beast's foul magic took hold, leaving even the commander questioning the MC's fate. Was he cursed from the very start? If that was the truth, then this whole situation was a total nightmare. A voice from the crowd pleaded with Manase to just abandon Nakatani and save herself. Naomi claimed to understand her pain, but insisted that if he can't be saved, they have to leave him to rot. Someone shouted that he was nothing but dead weight, agreeing with Naoki that they were powerless to help such a weakling. Our hero's head spun. Was this a sick joke? Manase screamed at the crowd that Nakatani was their comrade, but the atmosphere was turning toxic. Onizuka spat back, declaring that he'd never consider a useless coward like that his friend. He mocked the dying boy, claiming it was his own fault he was finished, and the crowd actually started to agree. He's so incredibly pathetic. Is he really going to drag Manase down into the abyss with him? Our MC's mind raced. He'd sacrificed everything to save Manase, so why were they betraying him now? Through a flood of tears, Manase begged for his forgiveness, wishing with all her soul she had the power to heal him. Naoki lunged forward, seizing her hand and demanding she halt, even though she'd already pushed herself to the absolute limit. She was desperate to survive for Nakatani's sake, while our MC begged Manase to hold back, terrified of his own impending death. Naoki stepped toward Nakatani, calling him a dead weight to the team and accusing him of breaking their precious healer's heart. He absolutely loathes pathetic trash like this, wishing nothing but a slow, agonizing end for him. Nakatani stood there, paralyzed by the sheer shock of the situation. A look of total, utter disbelief was frozen on his face. Amanda rushed over to warn Naoki that this deadly curse could spread to anyone nearby. Realizing time was running out, Naoki offered a cold, hollow apology. He claimed he was simply bidding a final, permanent farewell to an old classmate. Terror gripped the MC as he spiraled. What on earth did that ominous threat actually mean? Naoki's kindness was suffocating him, his throat aching as the freezing cold set in. Gasping for air and unable to move, Nakatani wondered if they were really going to let him die right there. The second Izuka called out to Naoki. A desperate plan sparked in his mind. Naoki screamed a warning about the curse, but Onizuka ruthlessly shut him down. He wasn't about to take orders from anyone. Wasn't he supposed to be the hero? Why won't they just do the killing themselves, instead of calling this gathering experience? Suddenly, a panicked voice erupted from the crowd, begging Onizuka to stop. Watching Onizuka approach, the MC's mind raced. What the hell was this guy talking about? He had to stay back. But damn it, his body just wouldn't cooperate. He knew he had to move, but his body was refusing to budge. He absolutely loathed this feeling as the icy grip of death began to take hold. Onizuka marches over, yanks the kid up by his collar, and winds up for a brutal strike. Just as the blow is about to land, a mysterious voice echoes in his head, screaming for him to unleash his power. If he wants to survive, he has to use it, but he just chuckles, knowing damn well how pathetic he really is. But hey, if he can pull off one last dirty trick with his useless ability, at least he'll go out with a bang. Onizuka stares at him in pure shock, barking out that he's a total moron for smiling at a time like this. Suddenly, a blinding white light erupts from nowhere, making Manase scream in absolute terror. Akane shrieks at the top of her lungs, demanding to know what the hell is happening. The entire crowd is paralyzed with shock as Onizuka recoils from the sudden blast. Voices from the mob scream for him to stay back, desperately calling his name and wondering what kind of miracle he just pulled off. Our hero stands frozen, staring at his palms and questioning his own strength. He wonders if his broken body can even move another inch. Onizuka lunges forward with a roar, swinging his blade at Nakatani. He screams that Nakatani's life is worthless and he's going to end it right now. This is the end. But as the MC snaps his eyes open, reality shifts. He actually blocked the strike, leaving Onizuka cursing in pure frustration. Naoki gasps in disbelief. How could the unstoppable ogre god technique be halted? It's impossible. But then, a mysterious voice echoes through the air. The voice booms again, revealing his true, terrifying gift: absorption. With that surge of power, Nakatani sends Onizuka flying back with a massive blow. The mysterious voice boomed that his ogre god skill was gone, completely absorbed, leaving our hero in a state of total shock. Onizuka exploded in a fit of rage, screaming that he was a fool for hiding his true power just to humiliate him. Onizuka lunged forward with another strike, howling for him to get lost as he swore to tear him apart. Our hero effortlessly evaded the blow, his mind racing with the realization that he refused to die here. He wasn't going to be a victim anymore. He was stronger now and ready to seize this moment. He lunged forward, seized Onizuka, and hurled him into the stone wall with devastating power. He was still dead set on ending him right then and there as the entire crowd stood frozen in shock. Everyone watched in pure horror as Onizuka violently coughed up a spray of thick, red blood. At the sight of the carnage, the knight captain let out a wicked cackle and barked an order to seize them. He gripped our hero's hand tight, whispering that he had never seen such raw potential. Nobody expected him to wield such insane strength, even surpassing Onizuka himself. Tsuka, that is, the unmistakable talent of a true hero. Nakatani's hand suddenly dropped to his side. He lied and said he was happy, but a sinister plan was forming in his mind. He wanted to leave him to rot in the dirt because he absolutely despised him. Our MC suddenly remembered the commander's cold, heartless words. He was branded as a cursed soul who should be abandoned forever. Naoki sprints over and demands to know where Nakatani thinks he's going. Our MC just turns his back and walks away, completely ignoring Naoki's frantic attempts to stop him. As he strides off, Minas calls out with one final desperate question. There he is, the man of the hour, MC Glanston. He shot her a cold glare, turned his back, and just kept on walking. Naoki ordered Minasa to watch over Onizuka, and she gave a sharp nod of agreement. Naoki warned the commander that leaving Nakatani unsupervised was a recipe for disaster. That guy has the raw power to crush Onizuka and could easily become their worst nightmare. He knew that the next time they crossed paths, he'd be the one walking away in triumph. He pushed through the freezing cave, his body numb, when a sudden greeting caught him off guard. He had no idea how long he'd been wandering, but fortunately, luck was on his side. No monsters crossed his path. But then, that mysterious voice echoed through the silence again. He wiped them all out, and Nakatani finally turned the tide of the battle. He whipped his head around, only to find a mountain of slaughtered monsters. That mysterious voice barked at him to move faster, mocking him as a mere outsider. A massive, ominous door loomed over Nakatani, leaving him gasping, "What on earth is that?" His ultimate skill finally awakens, but what terrifying secret is hidden behind that door? A system window flashes before his eyes. Nakatani has unlocked the god-tier skill, Ogre Absorption. The voice screams for him to throw it open. The forbidden seal is gone, and the path is clear. Back at the surface, the rest of the group stumbles out of the cave, desperate for a breath of air. Akan leans back casually, complaining about the stench, while coldly declaring that Nakatani is toast. This is it, right? The most lethal, soul-crushing dungeon in the entire kingdom? The crowd erupts in a panic, demanding the Knight Leader explain exactly how dangerous this hellhole really is. The Knight Commander warned that the dungeon's deepest depths are strictly off-limits, but how did Akane uncover that secret? A status window flashes into existence. Akane Sagi, Level 1, possessing the observation skill to rip the truth from anyone's mind. Akane rushes straight to Minace, declaring that she doesn't need to lose another night of sleep over Nakatani. She's done her part, and she's officially finished caring about a guy who went rogue and abandoned them. Naoki roars out in agreement, leaving Akane completely stunned as she stares at him in total confusion. Naoki spits out a curse, fuming over how incredibly selfish the guy was for ditching the entire group. Even after his warning, Akane just lets out a cold chuckle, saying everyone should just do whatever they feel like. Naoki whirls around and screams at her, demanding to know what kind of insane logic she's using. But then he freezes as he realizes his entire squad is standing right in front of him, and every single one of them is judging him with a look of pure disappointment. A sudden, violent sound erupted right behind his back. Someone was absolutely smashing their fists into the dirt. Onizuka pounded the earth in a fit of pure desperation. He screamed for the whole world to rot in hell. Why was he so pathetic and powerless when he needed strength the most? He vowed to slaughter his enemy next time, as the stunned crowd branded him a total psycho. But the reality was brutal. Nakatani had already humiliated Onizuka. Could Nakatani actually be more of a monster than Naoki himself? Naze glared toward the cave's exit, his voice trembling as he uttered Nakatani's name. Akane burst into a wicked laugh, wondering just how insane things would get if he was still breathing. To her, it felt like they had just stepped straight into a nightmare. They were deep inside the Demon King's lair, and Nakatani desperately yanked on the handle. The heavy door creaked open as he cautiously crossed the threshold. Once inside, his eyes widened in absolute shock at what lay ahead. A massive, endless corridor stretched out into the darkness before him. "What is this place?" he whispered, his heart racing with uncertainty. A foul, rotting stench filled the air, making his stomach churn with every breath. Pure terror gripped his soul, sending violent shivers down his spine. He fought to stay calm, but then a mysterious voice echoed from the far end. A chilling plea for help called out, begging him to come closer into the dark. "Come closer," she beckoned, as Nakatani's memories began to resurface. He suddenly remembered the weight of Manassa's words. From the moment she had begged for his forgiveness. Steeling his resolve, he began his long climb up the stairs. He had no home to return to, leaving him with zero options. He could only press forward, where a girl waited to thank him for coming. She had been waiting in the shadows for this exact moment. Calling him a stranger, a young girl sat before him, exposed upon a grand throne. She hailed him as her only hope, but a terrified Nakatani immediately looked away. He awkwardly apologized, swearing he didn't see anything, but he definitely did. He saw absolutely nothing. But she called the situation a total disaster, leaving him completely stunned. She dropped a bombshell, revealing she knew he was from another world, and he thanked her for saving his life. In this strange land, his own allies were hunting him down, and she claimed she only gave him a tiny nudge to survive. Nakatani covered his face in despair, admitting that if it weren't for her, he'd be a dead man right now. She looked him in the eye and told him straight up there was no way he was going to die. His power was absolutely monstrous, so she finally popped the question, why not join forces with her? Nakatani hesitated, his mind racing, as he asked her what she was really after. Her response was chilling. She wanted him to help her get revenge on the Empire. The Empire was her target, and she needed his incredible strength to pull it off. Our hero was floored, asking her if she was seriously planning to take on the entire Empire. She points the finger at the Holy Empire of Valencia, the very kingdom that dragged him into this world. Her mission is total annihilation, but he warns her that attacking the Empire is a suicide mission. She looks him in the eye and asks a chilling question. Don't you want payback for what they did to you? Memories of his suffering flood back as he echoes her words. A grudge? A grudge? He'd be a total liar if he said he didn't want to see them burn. She smirks and declares that since they share the same hatred, they're officially partners in crime. She realizes she's been rude and decides it's finally time for a proper introduction. Her name is Melia, and she's a force to be reckoned with. He steps forward and gives his own name, Nakatani Yuto. She promises to remember it, calling his name cute, leaving him baffled that she can talk about bloody revenge and compliments in the same breath. A deep-seated grudge haunts this very throne, and he demands to know why. He presses her for the truth, only for her to drop a bombshell. She's a demon. Terror grips our hero as he stammers out, "A demon? What the hell do you mean?" She reveals her true identity. She's the daughter of the Demon King who once ruled these lands. Our MC can barely believe his ears, echoing back in shock, "The Demon King." She explains that 4 centuries ago, this very spot was the thriving capital of the Demon Kingdom. Under a shimmering moonlit sky, the capital of Lunaria stood as a glorious paradise for all demonkind. Built by her father, it was a land of peace and unity where every demon lived in perfect harmony. It was a breathtaking utopia that any race would envy, until a mysterious man appeared. He delivered the chilling news to the king. Their entire paradise had been wiped out in just one night. The king bolts upright, his eyes wide with fury. Panic erupts as everyone screams that it's far too dangerous. A desperate voice cries out, begging and pleading for them to let him go. Malia presses on, describing how the Empire ruthlessly invaded and did whatever they wanted. They butchered every demon in sight, while a frantic voice bellows for the king. They were actually smiling as they took those lives, leaving Nakatani frozen in pure horror. She doesn't stop there, detailing how they completely defiled their sacred paradise. Their cruelty knew no bounds, spreading past the capital as they enslaved the survivors and forced them into a horrific fate. When the world finally saw the Empire's savagery, they lied and claimed the demons were nothing but barbaric cannibals. France warped the truth to become a heroic nation, claiming they were just demons, a vile specie. From beastmen to fairies, she turned away and claimed it was never their instinct to kill. It wasn't in their nature to hunt humans, but there's a whole other side to this story. Countless demons actually lived in total harmony right alongside mankind. But humans exploited that kindness, and she's suffering that exact same fate. Her massive power is completely sealed, leaving her rotting in this cage. Her ultimate dream is to resurrect a new Lunaria right on this very soil. She wants a sanctuary where demons find peace, and her scattered kin can finally reunite. She'll save everyone being hunted down. That's her one true wish, though it sounds crazy. It sounds like total demonic garbage that no sane person would ever believe. But against all odds, our hero looks her in the eye and says he believes every word. He vowed to protect her and reached out his hand in a gesture of absolute loyalty. He flashed a grin, knowing full well he had absolutely nowhere else to go. He chose her to be his new destiny. But then a sudden realization hit him. There was no way she could even touch his hand with these people watching. She cut him off, but our hero stood his ground and told her to just take his hand. He was ready to fight for her. But what was the first move in this dangerous game? She paused before declaring they needed a master plan and the sheer might to overthrow the entire empire. To win, they'd need overwhelming power and a massive army, so he asked if she had any comrades. She shot him down, pointing out she'd been locked away for 4 centuries, leaving him scratching his head in total awkwardness. He realized she was right, and she revealed that her curse is a unique seal that only the most powerful dispel magic can break. To reclaim her birthright as the Demon King's daughter, she needs him to master skills that can shatter her curse. He demands to know how to get that power, and they both answer at the exact same moment, shouting one word: absorption. But there's a catch. She warns Nakatani that his current body is far too weak to survive. The sheer intensity of the spell, so he has to evolve right now. Stronger, he repeats, the weight of the challenge finally sinking in. Suddenly, the entire world trembles, forcing him to spin around in shock. He shouts for answers, and she realizes the nightmare has finally woken up. Awake, he stammers, but she's already bracing for impact. She warns him that bloodthirsty monsters are constantly surging from the depths of this dungeon. With a knowing smirk, she reveals the shocking truth. His hidden ability is actually absorption. This insane skill lets him rip the strength right out of others, and she demands he starts by taking hers. He spins around, hesitant to use it on her, terrified of what might happen if he actually steals her magic. She calms his nerves, explaining that the victim only loses their power for a short while. Just a short while, he wonders, as his mind begins to race with the possibilities. If that's true, then Onizuka should be completely powerless right now. But when he checks the status window, he's shocked to see the guy still has his abilities. She explains that the stolen power stays with him forever, making him an unstoppable force no matter how much he takes. But there's a catch. He has to train like crazy to master the compatibility of every new skill he steals. If he can master just one of these powers, he'll be set for the rest of his life. He can hold that power as long as he needs, explaining that this is the true strength of absorption, while a swarm of beasts charges right at them. Nakatani spins around, her eyes wide, as she demands to know what's happening. He screams a desperate warning about the monsters, but she completely ignores the danger. She commands him to take her hand and get ready to move. She tells him to press his hand against her chest, leaving him frozen in total shock. As she drains every ounce of energy possible, he awkwardly stammers about where he's supposed to touch. She snaps that direct contact is the only way to make this work, so he needs to hurry up. He's completely flustered by the request, staring at her in disbelief. She yells at him to stop stalling, because if he doesn't move now, those monsters are going to rip him apart. With no other choice, he pushes his hesitation aside and finally places his hand on her. Suddenly, she screams for him to come at her. A sinister black light explodes straight from her chest. He's stunned as a wave of forgotten memories starts to rush back. They swirl in his mind while she whispers a final thank you. Every ounce of her magical power has completely vanished. Even if just for a moment, she's now a girl without a spark of magic. Since she's powerless, the chains are gone, leaving him in total shock. She flashes a smile and congratulates him on the incredible feat. He successfully absorbed the power, and because of him, she's finally liberated. He's finally free. She asks how he feels, but as he stares at his hands in confusion, she warns him that he has the power. Now he just needs to master it. He didn't hesitate for a second, snapping the window open in a flash. The status screen flickered to life as she urged him to keep going. He was packing serious heat with magical enhancement and power conversion. The screen revealed Nakatani Yuto's insane arsenal, skill absorption, ogre god, and the terrifying Black Burial. She promised her skills would back him up, but even with enough power to crush those monsters, Nakatani feared his own out-of-control strength. She grabbed his hand tight, promising that as long as they were together, everything would be fine. Her touch stilled his racing heart, and he spun around to face the monsters with cold determination. After all this time, her words were the spark that reignited his fighting spirit. Melia declared that even with just a single skill, he was the true chosen one. With power like that, there wasn't a single thing in this world he needed to fear. The world was his for the taking, and nothing could stop his absolute conquest. Piece by piece, the true nature of this power finally started to click in his mind. Black Burial, a devastating skill that grants him total mastery over the shadows themselves. This was the perfect weapon to bridge the gap in the ogre god's raw physical power. He slams his palm into the earth and roars the command, Black Burial. He unleashes the full weight of the darkness to utterly crush his opponent. With every ounce of his strength, he screams out his next move, Absorption. Exhaustion finally hits him, and she rushes over, desperate to know if he's still holding on. The battlefield was silent. Not a single monster was left standing. She commends his incredible victory, but they both knew they had to investigate what came next. Just look at that. His level has skyrocketed, and a glowing status window flashes into existence. Nakatani Yuto has hit level 87, armed with insane abilities like Absorption, Ogre God, Hard Claw, and even Lightning Strike. With Black Burial unlocked, he tests his new claws and realizes his massive mana pool can easily handle her overwhelming power. Hard Claw shatters the very earth, Flash pierces the darkest abyss, and Stormwind transforms into a deadly spear or an unbreakable shield. Every single one of these god-tier abilities synergizes perfectly with his devastating Ogre God form. He stares her down, demanding to know the true extent of this monstrous Ogre God power. She just smirks, telling him that he's only scratched the surface and absolutely cannot stop now. A cold shiver runs down his spine as she reveals their terrifying goal, the total annihilation of an entire kingdom. He's itching to destroy her right here, but he craves more skills first. So he cuts her off and tells her to finally put some clothes on. She just looks at him playfully, asking why on earth she would ever need to do that. He yells out in total confusion, demanding to know what she means by that. Realizing she might catch a chill, she quickly traces a magical circle in the air. She agrees with him as a surge of pitch-black light completely swallows her whole. He trembles in pure shock as she suddenly emerges wearing a dark, mysterious cloak. She admits he's right. Walking around exposed is a bad look, even after 400 years. 4 centuries of isolation really numbs the senses, leaving him absolutely stunned. She asks if the outfit works, and though the neckline is pretty daring, he nods and thanks her. She declares the monsters are gone, and it's time to move, but he points toward the opposite exit. She shuts him down instantly, insisting they head in a completely different direction. This massive dungeon has plenty of exits, so there's no reason to go back the way he came. They're about to drop right into the Empire's capital, and he acknowledges the danger with a sharp nod. She explains that this route is actually their most efficient path forward. He begins to ask why, but his voice trails off as he notices a massive shadow looming. A monstrous scorpion erupts from the wall, proving her warning that every beast here is a nightmare. He realizes this is the perfect chance to absorb its power, just as she yells for him to brace himself. He instantly activates his whirlwind ability, soaring high into the sky. Hovering over the beast, he realizes she was right. This is the perfect setup for his thunderbolt. His heart pounds as he wonders what incredible new skill he's about to rip from its corpse. He's determined to find out, but her frantic warning pulls him back to the heat of battle. The scorpion doesn't wait, launching a vicious, lightning-fast attack straight for his throat. He's ready to strike back, planning to blast the enemy from a distance. He decides to unleash his whirlwind skill to shred the enemy. He rethinks his approach, preparing one final move before he strikes. His goal is simple: rip the creature's power away with his absorption ability. He lunges toward the giant scorpion and lets out a thunderous shout. Absorption, he bellows, ready to turn the tides of battle. It's time for total payback as he locks into his most dangerous formation. He admits this monster is far more imposing than their previous enemies. She confirms it's a formidable foe, warning that the monsters ahead are even more lethal. Their road leads straight into the Great Forest of Dingot, far beyond the Empire's borders. The Great Forest of Dingot, he asks, and she reveals it's a cursed hunting ground for bloodthirsty demons. Her father lived for the hunt, even carving a hidden tunnel straight into the woods for the royals. But when her mother discovered the truth, she transformed into a literal monster, and the king found himself the prey. He cried out to her, desperate to prove his identity. She tells him to stay calm, declaring she's done wasting tears on the tragedies of the past. She's certain that crushing the Empire in revenge is the only way her parents will finally find peace. He turns away, his heart scorched by a hatred so intense it's almost impossible to imagine. His mind flashes back to the day his entire life changed forever. He was dragged into this world as a pawn for the Empire's disgusting greed. Terrified and on the brink of death, the Empire tossed him aside like trash. His heart blazed with agony as memories of his classmates flashed by, and he vowed to bury those thoughts forever. Three glowing chameleons suddenly shimmered into existence right in front of him. He knew that if he didn't push himself, they'd kill him. He had to reach a whole new level of power. He pulled up his status window, revealing Nakatani Yuto at level 196, with an insane arsenal of skills like absorption, ogre god, and black burial. He sheepishly admitted he's still mastering his massive list of powers, while she praised him for his relentless hard work. Suddenly, he lost his balance and plummeted, joking that even the best of us mess up sometimes. Melia rushed to his side as he blacked out and hit the dirt, desperately screaming his name. Our hero decided it was better to just play dumb and act like he never witnessed a thing. He knew staying out of it was the easy way out, convinced that someone like him couldn't change the outcome. Nothing was going to change anyway, and he knew that fake heroism wouldn't save a single soul. It was a bitter, pathetic reality, but it was the only one he had. This was the weak excuse he always used to justify his own pathetic weakness. His eyes snapped open as he realized he was lying down. He was resting right in Melia's lap as she gave him a gentle morning greeting. He stammered out that he must have drifted off into a deep sleep. She revealed that a massive wall of black burial had been shielding them the whole time. He secretly wished he'd never woken up, but she insisted that these low-level trash monsters were no threat to him. He apologized, confessing he hadn't slept once since entering the dungeon, but she told him to drop the guilt. Once he masters the magic transformation skill, exhaustion will be a thing of the past. Yet he still kept apologizing. He froze. Did she just say he'd never need sleep again? She nodded, confirming that as long as his mana flows, he's good to go. He couldn't help but wonder, would a power like this have changed his life back in his old world? She explains that magic conversion is a legendary gift that funnels pure mana straight back into his veins. Wait, it returns? He asks, but she clarifies that this energy replaces the need to eat or sleep, leaving him stunned. This skill is absolutely broken, but he knows that stealing powers is pointless if he doesn't master how to use them. He's desperate to understand, but she shuts him down with a cold no, leaving him demanding an explanation. She delivers the grim news: there's no bridge left to cross. He stares into the abyss, seeing only rotted ruins that look like they collapsed centuries ago. She admits this is a disaster, since they're right on the verge of escaping to the surface. He panics, asking for a plan, because a drop like that is a straight-up death sentence. Suddenly, she grabs his collar and yanks him close, shocking him as she prepares for a desperate move. They decided to bypass the bridge entirely, dropping down to find a much faster route. He snapped that she needed to give him a heads up, but she just mocked him for being way too passive. Collapsed on the ground, he gasped that he honestly thought his life was over right then and there. He whipped his head to the right and caught sight of something absolutely massive. It was a literal field of skeletons, and he scrambled up with a panicked scream. "Bones!" he shrieked as she stared at the graveyard and confirmed they were all human. He yelled that he didn't need the grisly details and demanded to know what this place was. She pointed out the broken blades and blood-soaked ground, judging the marks left behind. This carnage clearly broke out well after the Great War had already ended. And to make matters worse, the mangled armor belonged to the mighty Empire. He asks if she's certain, and she snaps back that she'd never forget that cursed armor, and it's been way longer than 10 years. We're talking over a century, judging by how battered and worn those shoulder pads are. The bloodstains tell the whole story, and that skull is way too clean to have come from a regular battle. The skin wasn't even stripped off. It looks like it completely melted, forcing him to question her again. As the realization hits, she stands up tall, while he points out something lurking on the other side. Suddenly, the night explodes as a massive dragon crashes down right on top of them. The MC lets out a blood-curdling scream as he stares into the eyes of a literal dragon. She grits her teeth and realizes they've just dropped straight into a dragon's nest. A nest? He gasps, but she insists that jumping was the only way they were getting out alive. She screams his name, warning him that these corpse dragons are on a whole different level of lethality. The dragon lets out a bone-chilling roar as she promises him that slaying this beast will grant him godlike skills. He hesitates, worried that the gap in power is too deadly, but she reassures him that he's more than ready for this fight. After all, our hero has evolved into a powerhouse that no ordinary monster could ever hope to take down. He charges straight at the dragon, staring down a beast that looks absolutely invincible. Could he actually kill this titan? It seems impossible, given its massive size, and suddenly, memories of Manas from his school days flash through his mind. He remembers those quiet moments, passing her in the halls, and wonders why he's letting fear paralyze him now. If he wants to change his fate, he has to act, drawing on every brutal lesson he's learned since arriving in this world. He's already shielded Manasseh and slaughtered entire hordes of monsters single-handedly. He knows he can win, unleashing every single skill in his arsenal as he delivers a devastating blow to the dragon. A blinding white light erupts, creating a shockwave so violent it sends Melia's cloak flying into the air. Our hero was dead certain that his last attack would finish the job. But a split second later, he looks down at his own body in total shock. He's been hit with a lethal strike, coughing up a spray of crimson as his mind reels. Confusion floods his mind as he desperately tries to process the impossible. The dragon's roar shakes the earth, while our hero stands there, completely stunned. In that moment, he felt the cold grip of death closing in. The entire battlefield is scarred and broken from their chaotic clash. Melia rises to her feet and begins to calmly stride forward. She shuts her eyes tight, a mysterious grin spreading across her face. She looks on with a gentle gaze as she watches our hero struggle for his life. Staring down the massive dragon, he swore he would never back down. His legs shook with agonizing pain, but he refused to collapse. Fear and torment gripped his soul, yet the Black Burial pushed him forward. The Black Burial commanded him to keep fighting, even in a nightmare like this. Drenched in blood, the Black Burial refused to stop his relentless assault. He fought to ignore the searing pain and the terrifying loss of feeling in his limbs. He unleashed lightning, fire, and ice, praying his mangled body wouldn't give out. He needed a strategy, a perfect opening to strike. He had to land one single, bone-shattering, fatal blow. His mind raced to find the one path to absolute victory. Our hero brushes it off, thinking it's just some low-level, brainless dragon. But this is the legendary, immortal dragon, a beast that defies death itself. It's a forbidden-class nightmare that pumps out an endless, terrifying flood of magical energy. This forbidden-class creature is so powerful that even the elite Imperial Knights stand no chance. Yet she's convinced that our hero has exactly what it takes to win. He quickly molds a doll out of clay as a lethal plan forms in his mind. He's crafting a volatile, high-octane explosive mixture to end this once and for all. His strategy is genius. Strike the beast while it's vulnerable and stuck in the middle of regenerating. Before the monster can even react, a massive explosion rips through the air and rocks the entire battlefield. He roars at the dragon, daring the beast to step up and keep the fight going. He was fixated on one goal, ripping that power away for himself. Our hero took a bold step forward, closing the gap between him and the dragon. He glared at the massive beast and bellowed, "Absorption! Time to play," he declared, ascending into the sky to tower over the monster. He reminded himself to stay sharp, even with the gift of immortality fueling him. With a confident smirk, he decided it was finally time to test his new strength. He aimed his palm and unleashed a devastating corrosive flame. A massive blast lit up the sky, but he knew the fight wasn't over and struck again. He bombarded the enemy with a non-stop barrage of lethal strikes. He refused to stop his onslaught until he was dead certain that his life was over right then and there. He was ready to push himself as many times as it took to win. But look, Even that wasn't enough to bring him down. He poured every ounce of his soul into the fight until finally he sent the dragon crashing to the dirt, gasping, "Is it over?" As Milia praised his incredible work. She knew he could do it because this is his true power, the gift of immortality. He stared down at his horrific injuries in complete and utter shock. He couldn't believe his eyes. Every single wound had vanished without leaving a trace. She smirked, noting that this was exactly what you'd expect from a forbidden skill. The corpse dragon's immortality literally rebuilds his flesh as long as he has a drop of mana left. She realized she forgot a massive detail. The corpse dragon is a forbidden taboo species, and suddenly a status window explodes with insane abilities like lightning strikes, corrosive flames, and even immortality. Our hero is stunned and asks, "Taboo?" She explains that it's a title reserved for monsters with godlike power that no human could ever hope to control. This means he's just inherited a level of forbidden strength that shouldn't even exist, and he can't believe this legendary power is actually his. There's no time to lose, so she urges him to move out, because the great forest of Dingert is looming just ahead. With this incredible new strength surging through his veins, he's ready to march into the most dangerous lands on the map. He sets his sights on the heart of the Empire, where a group of young recruits are busy sharpening their combat skills. A young knight watches in awe, shocked at how easily they're mastering these abilities, while the commander admits he totally underestimated their raw potential. They refuse to slow down, pushing their bodies to the absolute limit as the training intensifies. Suddenly, a voice from the crowd shouts out in total confusion, "Wait, who is that guy?" The entire crowd erupts in cheers, screaming that Naoki is a total beast as everyone showers him with praise. The commander stood there in total shock, unable to believe he was witnessing such god-tier magic. His sword skills are absolutely lethal, and Naoki shouts that the rest of the squad is falling behind. Seeing his allies grow stronger was the goal, and he owed every bit of that progress to the Empire's elite guidance. The commander told him to drop the modesty because his talent was undeniable. Mizuka let out a blood-curdling scream as she tore through the darkness with a devastating strike. He shrugged off the pain and screamed, demanding to know if they actually wanted to reach the top. Naoki just wanted Onizuka to keep his cool, but a classmate taunted him for losing to a weakling like Nakatani. Onizuka cornered the guy, growling at him to shut his pathetic mouth and focus on the workout. The guy called him a brainless meathead and boasted that he would have finished the job himself. He claimed he would have absolutely destroyed the MC, making Onizuka snap in a fit of pure fury. They called him a total moron, but they wouldn't dare say that to his face. A guy rushes up and screams, demanding to know what Onizuka is doing with his crew. "Friends," Onizuka sneers, "do you want to be crushed like a bug next?" That's when Naoki steps forward to confront him directly. He tells him to knock it off, admitting he knows exactly why he's so pissed. But he warns him not to vent his blind rage on these innocent people. He needs to save that burning hatred for the person who actually deserves it, the one he truly wants to murder. Onizuka actually listens and turns to walk away. He storms off, barking at everyone to get the hell out of his path. Onizuka grumbles about how annoying he is, while the others thank Naoki for saving them. Minae scans the scene as a voice suddenly erupts from the crowd. "That's our Naoki. He's the only one who can actually tame Onizuka. That was incredible." Akane spots her and lunges forward, grabbing her shoulders and making Manasi scream in terror. Akane teases that she's been caught and offers to cheer her up. Minae claims she's fine, clenching her fists to show her spirit, but Akane admits she feels totally useless while everyone else is giving it their all. Minae looks at her and simply says, "If that's how you feel, then fine." But she knows in her heart that the MC is the one enduring the most agonizing pain of all. His image burns into her mind as she declares that it doesn't matter what trials the MC faces. He's her precious friend, and she swears she will be the one to heal him next time, no matter what. She demands they stop being sad and start fighting, but Akane tells her she's taking things way too seriously. Just then, a girl with long black hair tied back makes her entrance. A mysterious figure with a sleek ponytail suddenly stepped into view. Stunned by the hero's sheer presence, the commander spun around and gasped. "What?" He calmly greeted the commander just as a voice roared his name. "Chancellor Dennis." The commander demanded answers from Dahlia and Roy, but the man just smirked, calling their shock absolutely perfect. He pointed out his absence from the ceremony, while Naoki realized he was facing the Chancellor and the Commander, and they had a royal decree. He invited them to follow as the entire group gathered inside a massive grand hall. The man on stage apologized for the rush, but insisted they get straight to the point. He asked if they knew why they were here, and a voice from the crowd shouted that the Empire was facing total collapse. He nodded grimly, confirming that they were indeed standing on the edge of a total disaster. Carrying the king's direct command, he ordered them to the front lines to slaughter every last demon. Naoki asks about clearing the dungeon, but the man insists their new power is far beyond that. Forget the dungeons. Naoki demands to know what these demons are, and the man reveals they're savages who devour human flesh. These glowing-eyed monsters are half-human predators, the ultimate enemies of all mankind. Naoki is stunned, asking if they're really half-human, and the man confirms the grim truth. The crowd panics, wondering if they're just monsters, or if killing them would count as murder. The man bows to the hero, declaring this a direct royal decree that must be obeyed at all costs. Naoki doesn't hesitate. If the king demands it, he's ready to fight. They were summoned to this world for one reason. The Empire is on the brink of total collapse. With the world falling apart, this is their chance to finally prove their worth as heroes. The crowd erupts in cheers, following Naoki's lead as they finally find their bloody purpose. The man stood tall, declaring himself worthy as he poured out his gratitude for such incredible generosity. He pressed onward, knowing the demon remnants were using a crumbling, abandoned castle as their secret stronghold. Milius revealed a shocking truth. A thriving demon city called Argonum was hidden deep within a cave in the Dingert forest. Argonum, our hero questioned, as Milia recalled her father's old stories about the powerful figures who once ruled that place. The demons who fled Lunaria had claimed that castle, and Nakatani wondered if any survivors were still lurking in the shadows. "You've hit the nail on the head," she confirmed, and then, in the blink of an eye, the atmosphere shifted. A dark magic circle erupted around him, manifesting a sleek black cloak that matched Milia's own mysterious style. He was stunned, but she just smiled, calling it a small reward so he wouldn't have to wander around in those filthy rags forever. She teased him further, pointing out that even a warrior needs to care about his legendary appearance. Overwhelmed by her kindness, he realized this was all her doing, and thanked her again from the bottom of his heart. She credits him for her freedom, finally allowing her to chase the demon's ancient dream. They have to push past the massive forest to reach the city of Dingert, the city of demons, and the heart of Argonum Inc. Both groups are now on a collision course, hunting for the same demonic secrets. She remembers her father's stories of a castle crawling with monsters. These were the demons who turned their backs on Lunaria forever. Our hero realizes the survivors might still be lurking within those walls. He locks eyes with her, desperate for answers. She just smiles and tells him she's absolutely certain. She's sure they've arrived. So he asks how much further the journey is. Their destination was the dreaded city of demons, and she warned him it would take at least 3 days. 3 days, if we're lucky, she said. But he knew surviving that long without his skills was a death sentence. There was no way he'd make it. That's an eternity when you're completely defenseless. He whips around and spots a man who had just barely missed him with a deadly strike. The stranger sneered, declaring that this was exactly where their journey would end. He even had the nerve to mock them, calling them nothing but pathetic slackers. Flashing a bounty poster of our hero, the man apologized, but claimed that Head was his ticket to a life of luxury. He wished them a pleasant death, just as a girl carrying a poem stepped forward. With her ponytail swaying, she marched right up to the entrance of a massive building. She greeted the group of little kids, who were all shouting and calling her their big sister. She swings the gate open and steps inside with a bright greeting. It's her. She finally arrives in the room where the poor are huddled together. She wishes everyone a good morning, stunned to see such a massive crowd today. She gets straight to work cooking as a young boy walks up to her. He stands by the cauldron and apologizes for the burden they've placed on her. She's been caring for these demons every single day, but she tells them she loves doing it. A little girl rushes up with an empty bowl, begging for a second helping. The boy continues, admitting he has no idea how he could ever repay her. She insists they owe her nothing, since dragons and demons are sworn allies. An old woman explains that after the capital fell, the Empire's reach finally hit the demon city. They're barely clinging to life, hiding away in this crumbling castle, because even stepping into the woods means a fight to the death. She's heartbroken she can't repay the favor, but Lin smiles and reveals a secret from her own childhood. Back then, the demons treated her with nothing but kindness, giving her a deep bond with their kind. They aren't the monsters humanity is, and she'll fight with everything she has until the world finally sees the truth. Suddenly, a young boy screams her name, vowing to become a legendary warrior just to protect her and take her hand in marriage. She gently pats his head with a warm smile, promising that she'll be waiting for him to grow up. The old woman beams, certain he'll grow into a magnificent man that even the dragon people would respect. Lin spins around as the massive gates creak open, brightly greeting Mr. Warlow at the start of the day. She urges him to hurry inside, because a hot, delicious meal is waiting for him right now. But as his head emerges from the shadows of the gate, Lin gasps in absolute horror. What? Mr. Warlow, look! Naoki has finally joined the fray. He storms the gate, declaring that the demonic filth has nowhere left to hide. These are the very monsters who dared to stage a bloody revolt against the Empire. He vows to wipe every single one of them out, sending the demons into a total panic. Naoki and his squad unleash hell, tearing through the demon ranks like a whirlwind. Lin stares in pure shock, demanding to know exactly what these creatures are. Terror grips the crowd as they scream to retreat from the Empire's overwhelming might. Two men clash in a heated argument, one claiming it's their time to die as martyrs. The other refuses to back down, swearing he won't lose as Lin moves toward the carnage. She kneels beside the slaughtered demons while the man delivers his defiant response. He's already racked up 6 kills, but his buddy laughs, boasting that he's at 7 and closing in on 8. With a wicked grin, he vows to hit double digits, while Naoki silently creeps up behind Lin. She lunges at him, lashing out with her powerful tail as he gasps, "Wait, those horns! Is she a demon? That doesn't matter. She gets out now or she dies with the rest." But she snaps back, telling them to shut their mouths. "Shut up," she screams, demanding to know why they've come to slaughter these innocent souls. "Innocent?" Naoki sneers, the word tasting like poison in his mouth. "These are savage cannibals whose very existence is a sin," he roars, while she demands to know what they're doing. Someone begs them to stop because they're just children, but Tsubami mocks them, asking if they're just easy targets, while another girl insists that even monsters deserve a childhood. Tsubami screams at her to pipe down, mocking her by saying this soft heart is exactly why she's still single. He swings his blade at the small demons without mercy, just as Lin charges in with blinding speed. He lunges forward, effortlessly parrying her strike before slicing her arm clean off. Tsubami lets out a blood-curdling scream as she clutches the stump of her severed limb. Her companion panics and asks if she's all right, but Tsubami can only gasp through the blinding pain. Her friend begs her to stay calm, promising that Manesi will heal her wounds immediately. She shrieks at Manesi to save her, and he shouts back a desperate promise to help. Naoki confronts Lin, calling her a heartless monster and demanding to know how many more people she plans to ruin. He spits out her crimes, protecting demons, slaughtering the Imperial Army, and leading a traitorous rebellion. Lin snaps and screams that she'll kill him, calling them the real murderous monsters for what they've done. Naoki just sneers and laughs right in her face as they continue their march. As they approach the castle, the MC calls out to Melia, who immediately senses his distress and asks what's wrong. He figured they were just low-level thugs, but how many more of these bastards were lurking in the shadows? A bandit screamed for them to stop, realizing their backup was spread thin. This was their big chance, and his partner was all in. They were busy dreaming about splitting the loot when our heroes just strolled right past them, leaving the bandits shouting in total confusion. After the dust settled, Nakatani scoffed that those persistent morons were nothing but a pathetic waste of time. Our hero wondered if anyone actually survived the carnage, and Melia agreed they had to find out for themselves. They marched straight toward the site of the horrific massacre as the massive castle loomed ahead. Melia looked up and declared that they had finally reached the gates of Argonum. This was the city of demons, and she knew they had to push forward immediately. They had to stay on high alert, knowing an ambush could strike at any second. As members of the royal bloodline, they refused to just stand by and watch this tragedy unfold. He locks eyes with her, a confident smirk spreading across his face. Without a moment's hesitation, he gives her a resounding yes. They rocket off the earth and take to the skies. They race toward the fortress while Lin sits dangerously close to the demons. Naoki confronts the savage monsters, fueled by the agonizing pain of the fallen. Mourning those lost souls, he brandishes his steel and swears to wipe them from existence. She snatches up stones from the dirt, screaming that he's completely lost his mind. She hurls the rocks at him, desperate for him to just stop this madness. Naoki deflects her strike as she lunges forward, screaming that the Empire is the one destroying everything they love. Naoki launches a fierce counterattack against Lin, roaring out the name of his ultimate move, X. Explosive rounds rain down, but she dances right through the fire. Naoki keeps up the pressure, shouting his twisted ideals. He claims they aren't mere mercenaries. Their motives are far more personal. To him, they're just monsters that need to be purged in the name of justice. Lin throws herself in harm's way to protect the tiny demons. Naoki declares her death sentence, but suddenly a blinding white light erupts. The lethal strike whiffs completely as the battlefield shifts. The little demons are shielded as a massive cloud of smoke erupts. A thick haze fills the air, and he desperately tries to peer through the wreckage. He finally sees it. Nakatani is standing right in the middle of the chaos. Naoki stares in pure disbelief while the entire crowd gasps, and Minasi screams our hero's name with pure joy. Onizuka doesn't even hesitate as he blurs right past her. He bellows the MC's name, laughing that he's thrilled the guy is still out breathing. He vows to end him personally this time, but the MC just calmly raises his hand. Black Burial, he commands, and a void of darkness erupts right where Onizuka stands. Nakatani is reeling, demanding to know if they're the ones who finished them off. But Naoki just scoffs. Why wouldn't they? Those things are nothing but flesh-eating freaks. They've come for one reason only: total annihilation. He snaps at the interruption before freezing in terror, stammering out, What even are those things? Naoki leans in and asks the MC if he remembers the bears from back home. People always preach about mercy, but letting these monsters live only invites disaster. They just cause more destruction, proving he's a total hypocrite who's blinded to the truth. He knew this guy was a walking time bomb and realized he'd have to crush him personally. Manasa rushed onto the scene, screaming for Naoki to stop in his tracks. They were supposed to be classmates, so she turned to Nakatani, baffled that he was actually standing there alive. Akane cut her off instantly, claiming they didn't need to waste a single thought on him. Minasi stared back in total shock as Akane stood there with a twisted, psychotic grin. In a flash of rage, Naoki lunged forward to strike down the MC. He spat out a warning, telling him not to get cocky just because he managed to survive. Next time, he'll make absolutely sure he finishes the job and puts him in the ground. A voice from the crowd gasps that even after endless battles, Naoki's power hasn't faded one bit. His strength is overwhelming. Just what kind of god-tier swordsmanship is he using? His rhythm changes instantly, making everyone wonder exactly how much stronger he can get. Facing him would be a total nightmare as Naoki slowly raises his hand to strike. Explosive bullets, he screams, but the MC dances through the flames to safety. Naoki taunts him, asking if he's already terrified enough to stay on the defensive. Minace turns to Akane, her heart racing with worry, but Akane promises that he's got this. She keeps her eyes glued to the fight, desperate to see how this clash unfolds. Our hero has reached a level of power that makes his old, pathetic self look like a joke. That's the insane potential of a hero. But Melia suddenly steps in to shut him down. They screamed at him to stop, but he didn't give a damn. He gasped in total shock, unable to believe his eyes. As our hero swung his blade, he realized this whole fight was a total joke. With a single crushing strike, the MC sends him flying, leaving Naoki absolutely stunned. The Imperial soldiers couldn't believe a single hit could pack that much power. Pure terror gripped the ranks as they shrieked for everyone to fall back immediately. They scrambled to escape, ditching their gear and dragging the wounded behind them. They had to move fast, but suddenly, Melia ground to a dead halt. She blocked Nakatani's path, warning him that it was way too soon to celebrate. Nakatani turned his gaze toward Manas with a look of pure intensity. They screamed at the top of their lungs, desperate to escape this nightmare. He stood his ground to hold the line, even though he was flying blind. Carrying the injured was impossible. They had to fix her shattered arm immediately. Our hero steps forward and cold-bloodedly activates his absorption skill. He marches straight toward Manasa with total confidence. Nasi pleads with him to wait, promising she can take care of it. Ignoring her, he raises his palm to mend her wounds right then and there. He hovers his hand over the injury and commands his healing magic to trigger. Suddenly, a sinister cursed aura begins to swirl around them. They watch in disbelief as Tsubami's arm starts to undergo a radical change. He turned his back on the group and coldly walked away. Akane watched him disappear, her heart racing with uncertainty. She grit her teeth, desperate to pull herself back together. Suddenly, a mysterious girl appeared right outside the gate. She grabbed Naoki, shouting that they had to escape this instant. A frantic voice screamed for Onizuka to open his eyes and wake up. Lin didn't hesitate for a second and immediately gave chase. She roared at them to stay put as she lunged forward with a strike. Her fist flew with deadly force, but the girl parried the blow effortlessly. Lin mocked them, disgusted that they would even try to flee after all that. Those cowards were paralyzed with fear, forced to wait for the right moment. But suddenly, our hero steps in and cuts her off completely. He tells her straight up that they don't need any backup. These pathetic fools are just getting in the way. Their only priority is treating those gruesome injuries immediately. Nakatani screams out for Melia to help the fallen. She was perched right on top of the slaughtered demons. She stands tall and confesses the truth about her hidden abilities. Even if her massive power hadn't been sealed away, she still wouldn't have the power to drag the dead back from the grave. Her heart was shattering as she spiraled into total despair. Our hero called out for a miracle, instantly casting his divine healing spell. He mended the little demon's wounds, and they looked up at him with pure gratitude. Lin whipped around to face Amelia, her eyes wide with shock. She stammered that Amelia looked just like someone from her past. Could it really be her? As Amelia stared back in confusion, Lin dropped to her knees in total submission. With tears flooding her eyes, she finally let out a choked-up confession. She begged for forgiveness, consumed by the crushing weight of her past mistakes. She was haunted by the fact that she failed to protect the people she loved. She took the entire burden on her shoulders, screaming that it was all her fault. Amelia yanked her hand close and started to speak, teasing her that she was still the same pathetic crybaby. But deep down, she wondered if she had finally grown up. She was bigger, bolder, and more brazen than she'd ever been. Amelia pulled her into a tight embrace, proud that she'd survived all alone. She thanked Lin for everything while Nakatani watched from the side. He stared at them, the crushing weight of the tragedy still fresh in his mind. Together, they began burying the mountain of demons the heroes had slaughtered. Amelia told them there was no need to hurry anymore. They would take their time to right their wrongs and fix the chaos they've caused. This was now their ultimate burning objective. She reached out to Lin, desperate for a moment of her time. She begged for a private word as Lin slowly turned around. Lin faced the remaining demons and gave them her final answer. With a firm nod, she agreed to reveal the entire truth. She was ready to hear every single detail about her life story. She wanted the full picture, leaving absolutely nothing out. But suddenly, our protagonist jumps in and cuts her off. He demands to know the real connection between the two of them. As he questions their history, she insists they move to a better spot. A new girl named Lin steps forward, revealing she and Amelia share a deep bond. They grew up together as best friends, leaving him absolutely stunned by the news. She explains that in the distant past, the dragonfolk and demons were actually sworn allies. The previous demon king acted as their personal protector against the world. He watched over them because their race was on the verge of extinction. Every other species saw the humans and dragons as easy targets to be hunted down. To survive the constant threat of invasion, they had to shield one another at all costs. They were forced into a life of wandering, and little Lin collapsed while her father desperately called her name. Their energy was completely spent, and Lin found herself staring death in the face in the middle of a desert. Her father pleaded with her to stay strong, swearing that an oasis was waiting just a few steps away. Amelia's father suddenly soars into view atop a massive dragon, instantly sensing their draconic bloodline. Lin explains that the demon's mercy saved them, but the king notices their exhaustion and offers them sanctuary in his kingdom. They arrived in the demon realm, where travelers are welcomed with open arms, a land the demon king himself entrusted to her father. As the former dragon lord, her father governed the demon city, forging a powerful alliance that brought total peace to the land. Amelia chimes in, explaining that this ancient bond is exactly why the heirs of these two races have stayed so close. But then the capital crumbled, forcing the desperate demons to seek refuge within the hidden dragon city. That city became their final shield until the Empire's reach stretched toward Argonom, while she stood by, completely helpless. Terrified and weak, she had no choice but to flee, only returning now, prompting our hero to ask where she's been all this time. Amelia looks him in the eye and reveals she was actually in a deep, magical slumber. Our hero is stunned, unable to believe she was just resting while the world fell apart. Lin explains her dormant state was like a deep hibernation where her magic completely vanished. She was trapped in place, and by the time she finally woke up, the world had turned into a nightmare. Only the helpless remained, children, the elderly, and the dying, all being hunted like animals. Every warrior was already dead, leaving our hero stunned that she had to face this horror alone. Lin admits she was powerless against the heroes, her mind flashing back to Naoki's cold, haunting face. She cries out that the demons were innocent and never did anything to deserve such a brutal slaughter. Tears stream down her face as she struggles to find the strength to continue her story. She knows for a fact that without their help, every single one of them would be dead right now. Her voice trembles with relief because against all odds, so many of her people are still breathing. They actually made it out of that hell alive. Amelia demanded to know exactly who this stranger was. As she introduced him, she couldn't shake the feeling he looked just like one of the heroes. But Amelia quickly corrected herself, realizing he was something else entirely. The MC finally spoke up, revealing the truth behind his mysterious arrival. He was summoned to this world alongside the others, but their paths were ripped apart. They were separated by design because the Empire had become his ultimate enemy. Since he was a target of the Empire, Melia had a sudden epiphany. This meant he was finally an ally they could count on. Lin stepped forward, asking if he was truly ready to join their cause. Amelia then asked if she'd noticed he was way more powerful than those other heroes. Lin recalled the clash and gave a confident nod, seeing those enemies as nothing but weaklings. Melia explained how he shattered her seal and decimated the heroes who were supposed to protect the people. Now, he's seen as the savior of the demons, even if his arrival was fashionably late. But she's discovered a way to turn the tides and demands to know if the MC is ready. Tell me, have you guys actually finished the job yet? Right then, he thrusts his hand into the air, and boom, a horde of tiny creatures wearing those exact same cloaks suddenly warps into existence. He scoffs at how pathetic they are individually, but their massive numbers are insane. And Melia realizes the Empire is using this energy to move cargo. The MC points out that draining their energy saved the supplies, but that massive byproduct is a total nightmare. This summoning power is going to be legendary, but Lin begs them to stop before they start stealing everyone's skills. Our hero thinks this power is just a temporary fix, but Melia drops a bombshell. This change is permanent. Lin is blown away by this insane strength, but Melia reveals the Empire actually considers it total trash. Our MC can't believe it. How could anyone call a skill this powerful useless? Who's the idiot who decided that attracting objects was garbage compared to healing or summoning magic? After it absorbs everything, Melia, the only one who sees its true potential, demands that he prepares for war. He questions why he should take on the Empire, but she reminds him of the absolute chaos he just witnessed. She's convinced the answers lie with the enemies they just crushed as they begin their trek toward the Empire. They track down the surviving bandits to find out if the Empire was pulling the strings all along. The bandits confirm their worst fears. The Empire is definitely involved. And that's the cold, hard truth. With no more info to give, the bandits beg for mercy, but our hero doesn't care how much time he has left. He refused to rot in this spot for another second. Lin turned to him, desperate to know their next move. He racked his brain, wondering what his next step should be. As he questioned his path, we shift to the Holy Empire of Valencia. Naoki smashed his fist into the wall in a fit of pure rage. He spat out a curse, his entire body wrapped in bloody bandages. The entire group stood gathered in the massive, echoing hall. Over in the infirmary, the warriors who survived the demon onslaught were recovering. Akane rushed to Tsubami's side to check on her friend. Tsubami claimed the pain was gone, and her skin was flawless, as if the nightmare never happened. She rushes over to Akane, desperate to know how they'll survive after all this agony. Just then, Naoki storms toward them, his eyes burning with suspicion. He screams at Akane, accusing her of keeping a dark secret from the group. He demands to know why she's hiding her true powers and what she's really plotting. She tells him to back off, insisting she's already told them everything about her gift. According to her, it's just a minor boost to her vision and nothing more. Naoki stands there stunned as she turns her back and starts to walk away. She coldly reminds him that she's already given him the only answer he's getting. Could she have witnessed the entire tragedy with her own eyes? Oh, Nakatani. When asked about the MC's skills, Naoki scoffs that it's just some pathetic suction ability. It's the power to pull everything toward you, just like that MC she spotted. That guy was a total beast, packing an insane arsenal of deadly skills. The whole crowd gasped in shock, demanding to know how such a thing was possible. Naoki pressed her for answers, but she stayed cryptic, refusing to say another word. She claimed her sight was sharpening, but beyond that, everything was a total mystery. Naoki choked back his terror, screaming out, How is that even humanly possible? He was nothing more than a pathetic, spineless brat. Akane glared at him, demanding he repeat what he just said about being a coward. It was clear now they had no choice but to throw down and fight him. But if he's so bad, why on earth did he shield the tribe from those demonic monsters? Were these demons actually man-eaters? And what was the Empire really plotting? Minasi stepped forward, closing the distance to confront them. She rushed over, shouting to see if she was still alive. They cornered her, demanding to know who was responsible for this mess. Suddenly, a man stepped out of the shadows and announced their arrival. This group of legendary heroes looked absolutely thrashed and broken. Even their god-tier skills couldn't save them from this nightmare. Naoki glared at the stranger and demanded to know his identity. The man scoffed, telling them they should recognize their superiors. You're looking at the man who controls this entire nation, the Lord Treasurer. Meet the future head of the Salisford House, Malcolm Salisford, who greets them with a smug smile. Naoki apologizes and asks why the Lord Treasurer is here, only for the man to offer his divine wisdom. He boasts that without his help, they'd still be rotting in that dungeon after their run-in with the demons. Every other lord expected them to die, but he won't let heroes be shamed by a guy with a useless skill. It's a terrifying thought, but that kind of power is exactly what they need to seize for themselves. He's going to reveal everything, the truth about that man, the dragon tribe, and his mysterious power. Information is a deadly weapon, and his own assassins would have already slaughtered them without his intervention. He's already made sure that every cutthroat in the criminal underworld knows exactly what they look like. Now that they're marked men, their only choice is to crawl into the darkest holes just to survive. They need to sprint for the forests or the ruins immediately if they want to keep their lives. Thirsting for revenge, Onizuka blasts the door right off its hinges. He lunges forward and snatches the man violently by his collar. He barks an order, demanding to know exactly where the target is hiding. While he grills the idiot for answers, the man smugly tells him to pipe down. He screams at them to let him go, but the man insists he needs to stay put. He promises to spill everything, but only after he's taught a lesson in respect. He roars that this information is a matter of life and death for all of them. He demands to know how a pathetic piece of trash could ever gain this much power. Naoki is stunned. How could Nakatani pull off such a cheap and cowardly move? The man simply grins, declaring that the Demon King's power has no limits. Naoki's mind raced at the mention of a Demon King, while the man boasted about how their empire crushed the Dark Lord. 4 centuries have passed since that victory, and now Salsford is ready to reveal the secret behind their legendary triumph. Want to know how to crush Nakatani's power? The man smirked. Then welcome to my humble abode. Behold, the massive and prestigious Salsford estate. They gathered around the table, desperate to hear the truth he was about to spill. He leaned in close, declaring that it was finally time to discuss the nature of true power. He commanded them to recount every detail of the very first dungeon they dared to enter. That place is known as the Imperial Labyrinth, but that's not its real name. Its true title is the Demon King's Dungeon, a cursed city once ruled by a terrifying overlord. It's a pit of pure hatred and demonic vengeance, fueled by this girl's overwhelming magical energy. With the demon population exploding, they were shipped off on this expedition for one reason. This was the ultimate test of their raw power, but Naoki demanded to know, who is this girl? The man revealed the shocking truth. She's the Demon Lord's daughter, sealed in the dungeon's deepest abyss. To prevent a total disaster, she must be eliminated, but a voice from the crowd suddenly interrupted. Locked away at the bottom of the world. You can't mean she's the one who... That's the girl who was with our hero. She carries the Demon Lord's blood, but she's just a child who absolutely wrecked those boys. Onizuka argued they only had a brief clash with the MC, and he was the only person they saw. The man insisted the first-generation heroes sealed her so tightly that her powers are completely useless. In that moment, Akane's mind raced back to the very first time she met the MC. It all comes down to Seed and the Demon King's mysterious daughter. The man kept preaching that humans by themselves are completely pathetic. They're absolutely nothing compared to the raw might of demons and dragons. Against those terrifying beasts, humans are as fragile as glass. To avoid extinction, humanity had to forge devastating weapons just to stay alive. Their ultimate trump card was summoning heroes, the same legends who wiped out the demons 4 centuries ago. Imagine the strength of 30 heroes, all fused into a single godlike warrior. That man is Rei, a powerhouse who can obliterate armies with one strike, leaving Naoki questioning their own strength. The man confirmed it. They were trash, and he was insulted they couldn't even match his private army. Suddenly, a kid in the crowd shouted that this guy was a total monster. He was effortlessly dangling Onizuka in the air with just one hand. He spat out a curse, shouting that he didn't give a damn about the Demon King. He sneered, claiming their pathetic weakness was exactly why they needed to hear the truth about our protagonist. Naoki demanded answers, but the man dropped a bombshell. The concept of a hero is a total lie. These so-called saviors are nothing more than parasites who exist only to steal power. He demanded to seize that power right now as he continued his chilling explanation. He revealed that Rei the Brave was dragged into this world wielding a terrifying, godlike strength. That legendary hero skill wasn't a gift. It was a raw power Rei had owned from the very beginning. He possessed the terrifying ability to mimic and master any skill just by glancing at his opponents. His strength reached such a monstrous level that the world itself couldn't handle it, leaving Naoki stunned. But the man just shrugged it off, acting like this world-ending catastrophe was barely worth mentioning. Every single one of them inherited a piece of Rei's godlike power, and now they just had to fuse them together. Minace questioned if they could really merge their strengths, and Onizuka gave her a confident nod. It was a definite yes. All that stood in their way was mastering the ultimate ability. He figured snatching the skill from the others would be a total walk in the park. But suddenly, the crowd erupted into a frantic whisper, wondering what on earth was happening. "Is that the Heike skill?" they gasped, shocked that Onizuka had pulled off such a legendary move. In that moment, the realization hit Naoki like a lightning bolt. He finally saw the whole picture. Elsewhere, Melia complained about the suffocating heat and the massive, crushing crowd. They had to stay patient, because stepping out in their ragged old gear was simply not an option. She agreed that rocking the Demon King's official robes would basically be like painting a giant target on their backs. Our hero admits that's exactly what he meant, fearing that being too blunt would have totally set her off. Lin speaks up, confessing she actually thought they were both wanted fugitives on the run. After all, the only people who even knew they existed were low-life bandits and cutthroat robbers. Melia agrees, realizing it's been ages since she stepped foot in the city, making this journey with them feel like a dream. And it's all thanks to Melia, who protected the entire Magic City with her powerful, invisible barriers. As members of the royal bloodline, defending their home wasn't just a choice, it was their absolute duty. She knew she could trust in that overwhelming power, just as a sudden memory flashes through our MC's mind. He recalls one of those thugs admitting that their suspicions were absolutely right. The man behind those mysterious leaflets was none other than the high-ranking Malcolm Salisford, the Empire's own treasurer. Our hero can't believe his ears, but the bandit insists this guy is a top-tier noble. He's a greedy fool, more repulsive than a common bandit, with massive estates making him infamous across the entire empire. Our hero explains that the Lord Treasurer is a high-ranking noble with far too much power for his own good. The vibes are totally off, and even the people passing by are grumbling about something sinister. They need to dig for intel, and while Lin agrees, Melia just nods enthusiastically with her mouth full of food. The squad finally marches toward the town to get some real answers. They've got to grill the locals to find out exactly what's going down in this place. Our protagonist realizes that the team is finally hitting their stride. They're finally mastering the art of navigating this chaotic world. It's just as he suspected. Malcolm and his shady crew have been causing nothing but trouble. Those scoundrels have left a trail of misery and a truly foul reputation in their wake. Even with his family's high status, Salisford was the key player in this legend. He's the man who brought the Demon King to his knees 400 years ago. He held the legendary power to summon heroes, commanding the raw strength of the very first warrior. He seized the capital in just one night, but Milia told him to stay focused and keep the story moving. She urged him to continue, describing how the heroes reached new heights of power one by one. The public adored him for his godlike strength, but the Empire's elite viewed him as a massive threat. While the legends say he died saving the world, the truth is the Empire was terrified of his might. They supposedly lured him into a dungeon trap and murdered him. A dark rumor he believed was 100% true. Lynn agreed, knowing Lord Treasurer Malcolm Salisford used his vast fortune to bully the entire city. He announced a grand proclamation of freedom, but it was all a twisted lie. They were ruthlessly snatching away everyone's servants and dragging children from the slums in the city to fuel their reserve army. Malia's blood boiled at the humiliation of the weak, declaring them sworn enemies, and the MC stood firmly by her side. MC signaled Lin that it was time to move, but Melia insisted on a shopping trip, leaving him wondering what they were hunting for. She turned to him with a sharp gaze, asking what kind of ultimate weapon he thought would truly suit his power. To stand a chance against the Empire, Melia knew she had to take the lead. She was ready to drop some massive truth bombs about this world that they never could have imagined. "We need to get moving immediately," she commanded, urging the group forward. MC leaned in and whispered, "This place looks insanely high-end. Do we even have the gold to be here?" She brushed it off with a smile, revealing that all those monsters MC slaughtered had been traded for a massive pile of loot. Those dragon horns alone fetched a king's ransom, leaving him completely shocked by their incredible value. The merchant beams with pride, asking if they're ready to handle his absolute best, top-tier gear. He boasts that this iron sword and shield are indestructible, and this helmet is just as tough. Melia cuts him off mid-sentence, demanding he hand over the goods right now. Hidden among the pile is a legendary tool designed to bend raw magic to its will. The seller warns that no ordinary human could handle this power, as it was forged purely as a tribute. It was crafted to celebrate the hero's summoning, meant to be nothing more than a flashy decoration. Our hero steps forward, completely unimpressed by the merchant's claims. "I figured as much," he mutters, while Lin grabs a massive, intimidating axe. She rips it off the wall, her eyes sparkling as she calls it the coolest thing she's ever seen. Milia looks on skeptically, asking if this giant weapon is just another useless ornament. The merchant grins, confirming he's been guarding this masterpiece for ages. This legendary steel was forged specifically to bring down the ultimate dragon. Our hero is absolutely stunned, calling the weapon a true work of art. Lin steps forward and demands to know the price of this insane gear. It's obvious she's been cashing out on all those rare dungeon materials. The shopkeepers realize she's a top-tier hunter and quickly show their respect. The salesman slams the heavy gloves and the massive axe onto the counter. He boasts that their shop is officially partnered with the mighty Empire. Because of their royal ties, they only stock the most elite equipment available. They bow low, hoping these powerful warriors will become their best customers. Our hero demands to know if that's the real reason the Lord is putting them to use. The salesman confirms it, but admits that Salisford's actual request was surprisingly basic. This gear is custom forged for elite craftsmen, creating weapons and armor that would crush any ordinary person. Melia steps up, desperate to squeeze every last bit of information out of him. Our MC insists on seeing exactly how the Lord handles them, and the salesman tells them to sit tight. Lin points out they're totally outnumbered, and our hero realizes his master plan is falling apart. He's absolutely certain that Melia lured them to this specific spot for a reason. The salesman rushes back and hands over the paperwork, revealing Salisford's official orders. As they scan the request, the scene shifts deep into the Empire to find Salsford himself. Salisford smirks, boasting that his legendary intuition has never once failed him. They were facing off against legendary heroes, even though one was left rotting and broken in the depths of the dungeon. They were terrified he was still alive, but a voice screamed that it didn't matter because the Demon King's daughter had just broken her seal and escaped. Did these fools even realize the gravity of the situation? He barked at them to stay calm and stop worrying. That's exactly why we have heroes, he smirked, knowing his assistant had already cooked up a devious plan. He scoffed at the idea of getting stronger under his lead, declaring he didn't need to rely on heroes because of his own elite forces. His private militia was more than enough to handle weaklings and children, so he flat-out refused to call for the Royal Knights. A cold-blooded hero and a girl trapped under Ray's mystical sealing spell were all the strength they required. Dennis glared at Mr. Salisford, warning him never to underestimate the raw power of his personal soldiers. He announced that the entire situation, especially the fate of the hero, was about to change. Control over the heroes was officially handed to the treasurer, and the man barked his agreement. He told them to back off and let him handle it, a cocky smirk plastered across his face. As his carriage rolled away from the palace, he burst out laughing, asking if they'd seen that pathetic display. That so-called military leader was a total joke. How did such a loser even get close to Master Dennis? He was leagues above that guy in wealth, influence, and sheer brilliance. It didn't even matter, because that title was practically his already. The moment he stepped back into his mansion, the head butler was there to meet him. Malcolm demanded a status report, but the butler could only stammer in pure terror. Malcolm sneered, hoping those boys had already been sent straight to the afterlife. He pressed for the truth, desperate to hear that they were finally dead. The butler bowed low to the room, trembling as he admitted there was still no word on their deaths. Malcolm grabs him by the shoulder and delivers a brutal slap across his face. He screams that he's done with jokes after wasting a fortune and losing so many soldiers. With zero results to show for it, he demands answers until a sudden voice interrupts him. The figure announces his return, and Malcolm's eyes widen as he looks up. There, standing tall and imposing, is his very own father. He confirms his arrival with a cold stare and a grim message. He's been officially assigned the ultimate mission, to kill the White Hero. The father turns to his son with a look of pure intensity. He warns him never to underestimate their prey for even a second. They must guarantee that every piece of their deadly plan falls perfectly into place. Malcolm smirked, confirming that everything was going exactly according to his twisted plan. He stormed down to the basement, cursing himself for ever trusting those brainless morons. The butler spoke up, asking if he'd sent those fools out on a specific mission. Malcolm spat back that they were too incompetent to even capture a single, helpless, sealed girl. He branded them as worthless trash, but his gaze remained fixed on a mysterious cage. Suddenly, two pairs of eerie, glowing eyes pierced through the darkness of the bars. If a bloodbath was coming, these monsters were perfect, and a wicked grin spread across his face. Our hero insisted they head for the forest, but she couldn't help but wonder if their enemies were already waiting. Melia brushed it off, promising that a tiny setback like this wouldn't stand in their way. Lin and the MC shared a silent, tense look, knowing the danger was far from over. Our protagonist demands to know the real reason they've stepped into this place. She admits she's using them as a lure, making Lin realize they're nothing but bait. Melia looks her in the eye and asks if these souls are truly worthy of death? Nakatani racks his brain for an answer, but he's completely torn. Milius scoffs, declaring that he wants absolutely nothing to do with this mess. He tells him to stay calm, insisting there's no reason to stress over it. Lin confronts her directly, demanding to know what she's actually up to. She reveals her true goal. She needs their help to crush the people's growing rage. Lin questions if she's really planning to force the heroes into becoming Malcolm's personal hunters. Melia addresses the heroes as hunters, continuing her speech with chilling resolve. No matter how many lives the treasurer ruined, his twisted crimes had to stay outside the city walls. Lin agreed with the plan, but the MC cut her off, insisting that only heroes could handle this. They were the only ones with the power to act, and he knew a few legends who were up for the task. Millie stepped up to Lin and asked if she was starting to feel a bit frightened. Lin shot back with a firm no, while the MC stayed focused on the mission. He was a hero after all, so there was absolutely nothing to worry about. Milius smirked, realizing the whole situation was nothing but a trap. She threw her hand up and unleashed a strike against the mysterious figure. A hidden attacker suddenly lunged out from behind a nearby tree. She shouted that this was exactly what she meant and called out her next move. He calls out to our hero and lets out a heavy, tense sigh. Then, he marches right up to the bandit with total confidence. He demands to know if there's any way to get a message out. He has to reach the heroes, and he doesn't care what it takes to do it. There's a message he desperately needs to get to one specific girl. He asks if the bandit hears him loud and clear, and the thug finally speaks up. The bandit spills the dark truth. The Lord Treasurer is abusing illegally captured slaves. Before he can describe the cruelty, the MC cuts him off with a chilling, cold response. He signals to Melia that everything is under control, as the bandit asks if that's his final word. Nakatani warns him this is his last chance, asking if he has any allies left, but his fallen crew was all he had. Selling them was strictly forbidden, and the MC shut that idea down immediately. He had to alert his crew that they were about to hand over the goods. They were feeding intel to the world's top-tier heroes, and every single piece of data was vital. With everyone marked and ready, Nakatani agreed, while Milius shouted that it was go time. Before departing, Lin confirmed she'd seen it all, impressed by her incredible wit. They'd crawled through the trenches, and Lin knew the MC had endured his own share of agony. Milia stepped into the light, declaring that the time for talk was over. Lin wondered how long this would take, but Milia revealed they had the treasurer's secrets and just needed to lure him into the open. Lin realized he was too proud to call for help, and she admitted his strength was on a whole different level. Watch out, because the Lord Treasurer is a beast trained by the state's most elite program. The man gave a firm nod, finally acknowledging the plan. Naoki grinned, thrilled to see everything falling into place. Suddenly, a voice erupted from the crowd to speak the truth. Naoki was a total prodigy, a natural-born genius who was amassing an army of loyal followers, leaving Onizuka completely in the dust. Mizuka lashed out, mocking their pathetic skills, but the man fired back that they weren't to blame. Connie just shrugged it off, acting like she was totally clueless. It seemed like only a tiny handful of them actually had the fire to fight. Minas snapped back, insisting that every single one of them was grinding to their absolute limit. She vowed to transcend her power and finally bring the hero back home. A voice from the crowd snaps at her, telling her to quit filling her head with such garbage. She quickly plays it cool, claiming she's totally fine and just had a brief fainting spell. Akane catches the nervous whispers as the crowd starts buzzing with dark rumors. The chatter turns chilling as someone mentions hearing a terrifying word: slaves. She's shaken to the core, realizing this world isn't the simple fantasy she expected. Terror spreads through the group as they wonder if they're next to be thrown into chains. The boys huddle together, desperately searching for a way to gain their own power. They're itching for a fight, but there's a catch. Naoki is the only one who can actually use skills. She argues they should just follow Naoki's lead, just as Mr. Malcolm arrives to see how they're holding up. When asked if the plan is working, Naoki boasts that he's already unlocked a massive arsenal of skills. Malcolm grills Naoki about his abilities, but even after hearing the truth, he scoffs that Naoki doesn't stand a chance against his elite forces. Onizuka steps up, demanding a shot at the whole army while mocking those weaklings and their pathetic skills. He declares those fools worthless and dares Malcolm to prove his army's strength by letting him steal their powers. Onizuka points a finger at the massive titan beside Malcolm, choosing him as the first victim, and Malcolm coldly agrees to the match. Malcolm turns to his giant bodyguard and tells him the stage is set for his grand entrance. He barks out a direct command: "Go out there and play with these pests." The behemoth rips off his heavy cape, revealing his true, intimidating form. Malcolm issues one final warning: "Don't you dare end his life just yet." Onizuka smirks, admitting that this guy actually looks like he might be a decent challenge. He's ready to see what this guy is made of, while Malcolm watches with a dark look. A chilling laugh echoes through the air as Onizuka is forced to his knees. Malcolm bragged that he saw this coming, but his real plan was to seize total control of everyone. Lin's voice shakes with anxiety as she asks, "Are they actually going to show up?" Milia stands firm, promising her that everything is going exactly to plan. If they don't show their faces, it just means they're too weak to pay the price of this fight. Our hero smirks, remembering the lethal trap they set to lure their targets in. They've baited the heroes and Malcolm, knowing that a single hint of their location will start the hunt. Once the word gets out, those fools will come charging straight into the lion's den. It doesn't matter if it's the hero, Malcolm, or even both of them at once. Nakatani reveals the intel from the returning bandit. He actually managed to slip past the perimeter. He delivered their message, confirming that they were finally pushing forward. But Lin was lost, demanding to know exactly what he meant by that. He revealed that the powerhouse pulling the strings behind the heroes was none other than Akane Sajo. Malaya smirked, realizing this intel couldn't have come at a better moment. She pressed the MC to spill everything he knew about the rest of the hero squad. She needed to know their raw power, their deadly skills, and exactly how much influence they held. Nakatani gave a firm nod and pointed to Naoki Miyamoto as the easiest one to manipulate. Lin shuddered at his name, recalling the horror of his assault on the demon village, while Milia labeled him the skill hero. The MC admitted the skill was terrifyingly powerful, but Milia realized it was currently useless against them. "So it won't even work on us?" she questioned, with a sharp glint in her eye. "Who's next?" our hero wonders, his mind flashing to Onizuka, the savage who attacked him and already mastered the monstrous ogre skill. To the powerhouses, he's a joke, but to our MC, he's a lethal threat who's been acting like a total loose cannon since he arrived. He's been terrorizing the Empire, and Milia realizes this enemy is the perfect pawn to spark a bloody civil war from the inside. Lin warns that those two wield a massive amount of power and influence over the crowd. She presses Milia, demanding to know exactly how these masterminds are plotting their next move. Amelia drops a bombshell, revealing 4 dangerous girls they absolutely need to watch out for. First on the list is Akane Sajo, the girl who's already been causing trouble. She plays it cool, claiming her only power is a simple vision enhancement skill. But it's dead obvious she's hiding a much darker secret beneath the surface. She's a master manipulator who can charm anyone from children to battle-hardened adults just by reading the room. Milia finds the plan fascinating, and the MC explains that their success hinges entirely on Malcolm's reaction. He knows Akane prioritized her own survival, using her massive influence and skills to stay safe. She's going to manipulate Malcolm, leaving only 3 targets left on the board. Milia is curious, asking what the deal is with the girl who's totally obsessed with him. He shrugs it off, admitting he has no idea if those rumors are actually true. Natsuki Minas is a top-tier healer, but her real power is her massive influence over the heroes, rivaling even Naoki. Lin is skeptical, but he reminds her that in this world, raw strength isn't the only thing that matters. Menace is a master of communication who knows exactly how to pull everyone's strings. The final two names on the list are Nagisa Ino and the formidable Sayakaido. Sia is the elite swordswoman Lin faced before. They're absolute monsters in combat, but they have zero political power. Milia turned to him, desperate to know if their influence was actually reaching the others. He didn't hesitate, declaring that their power completely eclipsed both Naoki and Onizuka. Back in their old world, fighting wasn't a necessity, yet they had undergone grueling, secret training. Memories of his past life flashed before his eyes, leaving him deep in thought. It was becoming clear that Naoki was tangled up in something dark and mysterious. Lin trembled with anxiety, fearing they wouldn't show up, but Melia told her to stay calm. Wondering about his own growth, he instantly summoned his status window to check his skills. He stared at the screen, realizing his dragon technique still needed a ton of work to master. On the bright side, the water blade was looking like a total piece of cake to learn. He could see the moves playing out in his mind, but the true secret of their power remained just out of reach. Lin rushes over to reassure him, promising that he'll master every single skill in due time. Our hero gives his thanks, while Melia notes that now all they can do is wait. Meanwhile, Roy is standing all alone in the middle of the hallway. He gazes out the window, lost in deep thought. Suddenly, Prime Minister Dennis calls out to him with a formal greeting. Roy doesn't hesitate to ask what the hell he's doing there. Dennis fires back that he has his own agenda, and they certainly aren't on the same side. After the death, he felt he should at least drop by and check on him, even if it wasn't necessary. He confirms the facts, but warns that this time things have changed, because right now, he's here to settle the matter of the legendary White Hero. Prime Minister Dennis claims he's finally tracked down his target's location, but the Lord Treasurer is totally clueless and can't keep tabs on him at all. Suddenly, a chilling report lands on his desk, prompting a desperate request. He orders him to annihilate the approaching forces once and for all. Roy shuts him down with a cold no, forcing the Prime Minister to pivot his investigation toward Malcolm. This guy has to be eliminated, so he marches up and pounds on the door. Malcolm steps inside, and the Prime Minister immediately grills him on the situation. Malcolm doesn't flinch, swearing everything is perfect, which seems to satisfy the minister. The Emperor is losing sleep over the White Hero's fate, leaving Malcolm stunned. He presses on, determined to prevent any fatal blunders. As Malcolm begins to, he bowed low, confirming the truth to His Majesty with absolute certainty. He confessed that a dark rumor was haunting him, and when Malcolm pressed for answers, he finally spoke up. He turned the conversation to his own territory, asking if a brutal war against the Beastmen had once soaked that soil in blood. Malcolm confirmed the bloody history, fearing that even though the monsters vanished, their cursed bloodline might still be lurking in the shadows. This was a savage land that the Empire had to conquer and tame through sheer, agonizing struggle. The Beastmen possessed terrifying inhuman strength, and his noble house fought with legendary courage to hold them back. That tainted blood is a lethal threat to the entire Empire, and it must be wiped from existence. Their power is undeniable, but chilling whispers are spreading that survivors of that savage clan are still alive. He marched straight to the Lord Treasurer, ready to deliver a high-stakes recommendation. He urged him to step up and finally fulfill his destiny as the true representative of his house. The Lord gave a satisfied nod and made his exit. As he vanished, Malcolm's mind raced. Who the hell leaked their secrets? Malcolm ignored the Emperor entirely, obsessed with capturing the hero and ending the Demon King's bloodline forever. Convinced it was the only way, he listened as his butler whispered a secret. Malcolm erupted into a fit of wicked, triumphant laughter. He roared with excitement, announcing that he had finally tracked him down. He called the man a total fool for choosing such a predictable hiding spot. This was the very dungeon where his family had executed the hero, and Akane swore she'd done all she could. Akane was clueless about what came next, but Naoki was already prepared. He stood perfectly still, gazing out toward the far-off horizon. He's charging forward, and the legendary war is finally kicking off. Nakatani was dead sure the heroes in Malcolm had fallen for the trap. Welcome. Their position is exposed, and now they're the very first ones to arrive. The Imperial forces are stationed on the mountain, overlooking the vast dunes. Right at the dungeon's gates, our MC turns to Milia. He stands tall and announces that they've finally made it. But then a voice asks if Nakatani is actually there. This place is bone-chillingly eerie, far colder than the surface. Standing on the frozen earth, the guy whipped his head to the side. He shouted out in total confusion, "What the hell is this? Could this possibly be one of Sumika's legendary skills? If it's her power, why on earth are there so many of them appearing?" She stared at the spectacle, her face frozen in absolute shock. Naoki stepped forward with a sneer, calling him a pathetic coward. He barked that he'd finally tracked him down as our hero repeated the insult in disbelief. Naoki didn't stop, bragging about how he effortlessly steals the skills of others. He was trapped in a total delusion, convinced he had actually become that powerful, even if he only relied on those specific techniques to get the job done. Our hero stays dead silent as Naoki mocks him for being unable to even speak. He taunts the MC, bragging that he's finally unlocked his own hidden powers. He's convinced that the MC is absolutely no match for him anymore. Suddenly, a massive impact explodes against Naoki, sending him flying through the air. He hits the dirt, cursing his luck, only to see Lin standing right in his way. He snaps his head around, demanding to know why they're just waiting there. He screams in rage as the coward tries to flee, but Lin shuts him down instantly. She tells him he's dead wrong and lunges forward with a brutal attack. She claims him as her rival, telling the MC not to waste his precious strength on this loser. Lin and Naoki trade blows while Milia screams out. She bellows for Nakatani, and he gives a sharp nod of understanding. He realizes their true mission is to completely dismantle their enemy. They're coming for the head of the Empire's corrupt Lord Treasurer. They need to expose his twisted, illegal slave trade to the world. This damning evidence has to reach the heroes at any cost. That's exactly why they're desperate to avoid a bloody clash with the heroes. They have to hold back until the moment Malcolm finally arrives. Every single one of them has to stay absolutely silent and hidden. Naoki lets out a furious roar, cursing the heavens. These pests were constantly getting in the way. He barked an order to surround her at once. It was time to finish her off with a massive cannon. Giant artillery pieces erupted straight from the earth. The entire crowd froze in absolute shock. Confused whispers rippled through the terrified onlookers. Panic set in as he realized his powers were gone. Malcolm stood triumphant, overlooking the entire battlefield. From the mountaintop, he unleashed a wicked laugh. He sneered, calling them nothing but a pack of fools. This entire facility was constructed for one reason: to lock away monsters exactly like them, and it's all thanks to their own actions. He finally cornered every single one of them in the same spot. For pulling that off, they deserve some serious credit. Now, their eyes are glued to the massive monument. It's a mysterious power known as the Guard skill. Naoki stares at his hand in disbelief as the crowd starts to lose it. Panic spreads like wildfire as they realize something is horribly wrong. They're completely helpless. Their skills have been totally sealed away. He's a sitting duck, and if a monster appears, he's finished. Right now, they're nothing but dead weight. Malcolm brings up Ray, that legendary hero he mentioned before. It turns out Ray walked into this exact same trap and met a gruesome end. The group is stunned. Could that really have been the very first hero? Naoki nods, realizing that everything finally clicks into place. They've been stripped of their power and reduced to ordinary humans. Malcolm declares that he's taking Nakatani with him. He gives the cold-blooded order to slaughter them all since they're no longer needed. They're nothing but a nuisance, slowing everyone down. The heroes started muttering in frustration, their patience finally wearing thin. Malcolm and Melia locked eyes, sharing a tense and silent moment of realization. Malcolm was convinced that every single warrior was pushing their absolute limits. They were all hungry for victory when Roy suddenly questioned his authority. He demanded to know if he was truly being handed command over the entire squad. Malcolm gave a firm nod, dead certain that he was the perfect man for the job. He believed he was the ultimate leader and was putting all his faith in him. Malcolm felt his own raw power was enough to handle this without any help. He was ready to crush the demon tribe alone as the battlefield finally exploded into chaos. Suddenly, a desperate voice screamed out for Ino and Sia to join the fight. Sia screams out for Nagisa, who immediately signals her readiness. She's locked in and focused, but Malcolm is still gripped by confusion. Their powers are completely sealed away, so how can they possibly survive this? They're moving like savage predators who live only for the kill. He gives a grim nod of confirmation and continues his dark explanation. People call them beastmen, but the reality is far more terrifying. They're just wild monsters that need to be put on a leash. And Lin snaps at our hero. She demands to know if they should just wipe them out, and Nakatani agrees. But hold on, these beastmen are actually innocent souls caught in the middle. They're trapped under a horrific curse, and Lin demands to know the truth. He stood there stunned, but quickly explained the truth about those mysterious callers. Malia spoke up, insisting she could tear down that magical curtain. Breaking the curse was possible, but it would instantly drain her of all energy. She couldn't afford to collapse yet, so she chose to save her power for later. Lin looked at the group and asked the big question, what's the plan? We have to decide their fate. The heroes, the MC, replied firmly. He made it clear that if there was any other way, he wanted to avoid it. He didn't want their blood on his hands, and she told him she completely understood. Suddenly, Nakatani lunged forward and delivered a devastating kick to the beast man. He saved the girl's life, just as she cried out in terror. A voice suddenly pierced through the chaos, calling his name. Nakatani's mind raced with a single goal: obliterate that beast man. Then it clicked. He finally understood the enemy's trap. The only thing truly neutralized was his ability to trigger skills. But the raw power flowing through his veins, that physical strength, was still burning at 100%. Nagisa stepped forward, telling him to back off and let her handle this. He nodded, putting his entire life in her hands. But someone screamed that this was suicide. With only 4 of them left, they were being completely overwhelmed. The guy brushed it off, insisting everything was totally fine. He swore they weren't going anywhere. But then, in a flash, the beastman charged forward with lethal speed. He tore through them, slicing them clean in two. The witnesses were frozen in horror by this absolute menace. Akine grabbed her and shouted a desperate warning. She screamed that her abilities would be completely useless here. It was already far too late to turn back. Malcolm let out a chilling laugh, telling them they'd done a great job. He praised their work, announcing that the first subject was finally ready. "Oh, so you're finally ready? How absolutely delightful." He sneered at them, calling the whole group a pack of brainless idiots. He barked out a final cold-blooded order: make sure those girls don't leave here alive. In the middle of the chaos, Lin screamed out Nakatani's name. His piercing gaze shifted, locking onto Malcolm and fury with deadly intent. He mocked himself, realizing his own ego had grown completely out of control. But it turns out, the guy was all talk and didn't have the skills to back it up. Suddenly, a spray of hot, crimson blood splattered right across his face. The MC calmly stepped toward the lifeless body of his fallen foe, and with a chilling tone, he activated his ultimate skill, absorption. Malcolm sneers, calling him a total moron. He bellows at his lackeys to wipe them out once and for all. A hesitant subordinate asks if he's certain, but he snaps back. It doesn't matter anymore. They're completely beyond anyone's control. With this grimoire in his hands, he'll do whatever he damn well pleases. He roars the order to set them loose immediately. They're absolutely no match for the power of his secret weapon. These girls suddenly emerge, and he commands them to destroy everything. One of the girls steps forward, closing in on our hero. She asks if he wants to play before launching a vicious, sudden attack. Our protagonist stands side by side with Lynn Caldwell. Everything is going to be fine, Nina reassures Nona with a confident smile. She was wound way too tight, and there was absolutely no reason to panic. They needed to enjoy the thrill of the moment, and Nona insisted she was doing great. A brutal showdown was looming, but at least they were still drawing breath. Milia marches toward the seal as the atmosphere turns electric. Milia's mind is flooded with memories of the violent war against the Empire. She shouts that she just needs a few more seconds to make it work. She begs for a little more time, and our hero gives her the signal. He understands the mission perfectly and charges back into the heat of battle. They're squared up against Nona and Nina, and one of them scoffs that running away is just too dull. She mocks the idea of a chase and demands to know if the MC is actually a threat. She questions his power just as both sisters lunge forward in a deadly ambush. Lin screams Nakatani's name as the battlefield erupts into total chaos. Nakatani roars ice crystals, unleashing a frozen blast that leaves the sisters completely stunned. They're paralyzed with shock, demanding to know how he discovered their secret techniques. Lin shouts that they can't wait any longer. It's time to strike back. He realizes that pumping just a little more magic into his spell will seal the deal. One of the sisters cackles like a maniac as she swings her weapon at Nakatani. In a flash of speed, she vanishes and reappears right behind him for a surprise attack. She declares she's back for more and launches a brutal surprise attack. She mocks him, claiming he looks far more appetizing than her last meal. He's a way better snack than that puny dragon, and she teleports right behind him. She leans in close, obsessed with his intoxicating scent. She whispers bon appetit while Nakatani watches in absolute horror. He triggers his whirlwind skill, but she sinks her teeth into his neck with a sadistic laugh. She giggles, terrified that she'll get addicted to such a divine flavor. Her sister nods in agreement, but our hero slowly raises his hand toward them. He aims directly at the sisters and shuts them down with a cold refusal. He declares their little game is over as a blinding white light engulfs the girls. Our hero lets out a frustrated curse, questioning if they can even keep up. The girls' terrified screams pierce the air as they desperately try to resist. One of them lets out a chilling laugh and kills the lights, complaining about the dust. A voice from the panicked crowd shouts out, demanding to know what the hell is happening. Everything is moving at a blinding speed, leaving him completely in the dark. No one knew our MC possessed this kind of insane power, especially in a crisis like this. They'll resort to any dirty trick to win, as a frantic voice asks how to kill this thing. Just as the monster looms, our hero catches the sharp sound of Milia's voice. She gives a firm, confident shout of agreement. She commands him to break the seal and unleash his true power. Lock onto the beast, feel its pulse, and trigger the reboot. Nakatani stood there paralyzed, demanding an explanation. What is this? The sisters cried out in total shock. A wave of sickness overcame them, leaving them reeling. He smirked, boasting that his power was finally awakening. His aura exploded, while the girls felt their life force fading. With them weakened, he prepared to deliver the killing blow. She begged him to stop this madness before it was too late. "What are you thinking?" she cried. But Naoki just screamed back in a rage. He barked that these were their sworn enemies and this plan had to work. Without their help, they'd be dead and buried right now. He suddenly emerges, and Naoki demands to know what the MC is thinking. This guy has always been a total wildcard who does whatever he wants. He treats the rulebook like trash and shatters every single boundary. It was always the same old story with Naoki. Memories of his wild adventures with the MC come flooding back to him. He even started calling himself by the name Ish. Sia cuts him off, claiming he only did those things because he absolutely hated them. Naoki is left speechless, but Seiya demands to know the plan, and the MC declares they're retreating the second Malcolm is finished. She gives a sharp nod, fully prepared for the chaos ahead. Malcolm loses it, screaming at everyone to shut their damn mouths. He demands to know what the hell they're thinking, because he's totally against. Roy cuts him off, stepping forward to land a heavy, crushing blow. The impact leaves every single witness in absolute disbelief. Roy snarls that after every single crime Malcolm has committed, he's going to make damn sure the punishment is absolutely devastating. He turns to our hero, demanding to know what their ultimate goal is. It turns out he's been hunting Malcolm this entire time as well. He refuses to let the Empire betray the very heroes who protected it. But since they share a common enemy, he proposes an unexpected truce. These guys were acting like total scum, and Roy was at his breaking point. But Melia had one major condition. They're taking the Beastman with them, even if the Empire throws a fit. There are 3 of them now, but honestly, do they even have another option? Roy shouted that the barrier was nothing more than a useless piece of junk. Our hero was already heading for the exit, but suddenly Naoki lunges forward to stop him, screaming that he needs to wait. Wait! Just how much longer was he going to keep acting like such a brat? Naoki was literally vibrating with pure, unadulterated rage. Without a single word, the MC just turns around and keeps on walking. Malcolm's eyes snap open in sheer terror, and as someone sees he's awake, he demands the full story. The king declared that a massive threat was finally looming over them. Before this, it was just the daughter of a weak demon king and a daring wanderer, but with the beastmen joining them, the tables have turned as Malcolm shivers in fear. Roy tries to apologize, but Prime Minister Dennis shuts him down instantly. He admits they did their best, but slams Roy for being incredibly naive. He never expected such sheer stupidity, leaving Malcolm paralyzed with horror. Before Deanus can say another word, the beastman heirs, the last dragon, and the demon princess appear, and standing with them is Nakatani Yuto, the undisputed strongest hero of all. To fix this mess, they have to take control, making their return a stroke of genius. Now their first order of business is finding a brand new treasurer. He's surrendering his peaceful lands and territory forever. He's giving it all to the world's bravest warrior, while Malcolm begs for more time. Prime Minister Dennis glares at him, asking if he's still too blind to see the truth. All he can do now is pray that his dark crimes don't destroy his family. Nobility offers power, but it demands a heavy price in return. That burden is massive, and when the time for vengeance arrives, it hits like a tidal wave. His own family will have to pay for his mistakes, and Malcolm is shaking with terror. Prime Minister Dennis looks on with pure disgust, unable to stand the sight of him. He couldn't even keep his dignity as a noble, and Malcolm realizes he's been a total idiot. He was nothing but a simple economist until a knight suddenly ambushed them. He bowed his head low, desperately begging for their forgiveness. Prime Minister Dennis demanded to know what was wrong, sensing the heavy tension in the air. The knight leaped to his feet in the middle of the throne room, ready to speak. He gave a firm refusal, declaring that the conversation was officially over. Suddenly, the Minister of Foreign Affairs burst into the room with urgent news. He insisted that the gravity of the situation would be clear once the full story was told. It was time for the truth. The knight prepared to drop an absolute bombshell. He pivoted toward the Lord, ready to deliver his high-stakes report. The legendary hero Onizuka had just slaughtered 3 victims in a total bloodbath. He vanished into the night, making a daring escape with the surviving heroes. The foreign minister announced he had finally returned to the scene. He witnessed the entire horror with his own eyes and was left paralyzed. With total conviction, Prime Minister Denise spun around to face his ally. He told Roy that everything depended on him, sending the warrior into a sprint. Roy gave a fierce shout of loyalty and charged into the fray. Minas frantically screamed, her healing incantation over and over. She poured her pure mana into her fallen friends to keep them alive. The boy covered his mouth in terror and gasped out a question. He desperately asked what their next move should be. These were his only comrades from a completely different world. Paralyzed and helpless, he watches as Roy flings the door wide open. Roy steps inside, demanding to know what the hell is happening. Right then, Naoki whips around to glare at him. Roy marches right up to Naoki, desperate for some real answers. He needs to uncover the truth behind this absolute chaos. Naoki snaps, screaming that Nakatani and Onizuka have sabotaged the entire plan. Those two did whatever they wanted and left everything in ruins. Saya and Nagisa just stand there, watching the drama unfold. Nagisa speaks up, asking if they want to hear her side of the story. Roy doesn't blink, telling her he wants to hear every single detail. Izuka screams for her to say it again, and she stands her ground, promising to repeat it 1,000 times. She calls him out for his ego, reminding him this world demands teamwork, not his selfish greed. She's absolutely done with his reckless behavior and how he ruins everything for the group. It's time for him to man up, but Onizuka snaps, roaring at her to finally shut her mouth. He screams that they're all trash, yet they have the nerve to look down on him. Enraged by their arrogance, he unleashes a strike so brutal it's hard to watch. The impact is devastating, completely crushing her skull in a horrific display of violence. Her eyes are sent flying as the entire crowd freezes in absolute soul-chilling terror. Even Onizuka stands there trembling, staring at his hands and wondering what he just did. This wasn't just a punch, it was the terrifying telekinesis of the god of death. The man screams that he's finally gone way too far. Onizuka just smirks and says he understands the situation completely. The guy asks if he's totally lost his mind, wondering if this is really his idea of being a hero. That's when Onizuka strikes back with a sudden, violent force. He unleashes the same brutal punishment he just inflicted on the girl. He calls the sensation incredible, while Minasi stands there shaking in fear. Frozen in shock, she watches as Onizuka closes the distance and confronts her. He asks if her healing is actually worth anything, because he's going to find a use for it. Nagisa steps up to block his path, desperately trying to protect Manas. Nagisa stands her ground, telling him that this is just the way things are. She was busy resting in a different room, which is why she's only just arriving on the scene. Saya explains that Onizuka vanished the moment he spotted them, dragging those two away against their will. Naoki points out he was just as wild in his past life, and Roy can't help but agree that's just how he is. At long last, our heroes finally arrive at the gates of the massive city. They finally stand before the magical city of Argonom as Melia begins to speak. She brings up the epic party they had here, and while Lin agrees, Nakatani questions if they'll actually live here. Miller gives a confident nod, insisting that things are way better than they used to be. Before the MC can even ask for clarification, she drops a bombshell about a national decree. It's a proclamation for a brand new country, and she's dead set on building it from the ground up. The MC locks eyes with her in total shock and finally finds his voice. "We're building a nation," Lin declared, her voice filled with ambition. Milia gestured toward the horizon. "This is where our kingdom begins. It's a long road ahead, but there's no better time to start than right now." Our protagonist realized with a heavy heart that they'd just suffered a massive loss. A high-ranking minister and a legendary hero have both vanished from the board. Lin gave a confident smirk and reassured everyone with a bold claim. The entire empire is about to descend into absolute bloody chaos. "Is this the cursed ground where the demon horde met their end?" Melia nodded firmly, confirming this was indeed the site of the ancient territory. She announced that the first stones of their new capital would be laid right here. Deep in the heart of the demon city, Lin finally breaks the silence. With Andy there, the mood is bright, but the MC has a burning question for the group. He demands to know exactly what it'll take for Melia to finally establish her own nation. Melia just looks back at him, completely clueless about how to build a kingdom. She starts to ask what he's plotting, but she's cut off before she can finish her thought. One of the sisters suddenly lunges at him, screaming, "Brother!" and claiming he looks delicious. In a flash of pure chaos, they suddenly take flight in total shock. Lin shrieks in a panic, while the MC groans that he's in absolute agony. He spins around toward Nina and Nona, stunned to realize they've been awake this whole time. They cheerily wish him a good morning, but he desperately begs them to just give him some space. Nina and Nona are both starving, and Lin turns to our hero with a burning question. He asks if they missed him, making Milia laugh because only he can handle these wild kids. The sisters are literally clinging to Nakatani as he nods and shifts his gaze away. A scarred warrior approaches and asks if they're really planning to build an entire nation. Nakatani confirms the massive plan and mentions a secret about Lin. Since she's the Demon Lord's daughter, her father was the true head of the kingdom. He suddenly gets a chilling feeling that Nina and Nona share that same dark bloodline. The man is stunned and demands to know what makes him so sure. Our hero simply stares back and tells him it's pure instinct. The man pauses to process the news before finally nodding in grim agreement. Forget demons and dragons. These beings are something else entirely. They're a race of small folk who've inhabited these lands for generations. Long ago, they were a legendary elite class among the beastmen. They were a cut above the rest of their kind, standing out in every way. Every single survivor left from that ancient lineage now holds a position of immense power and prestige. He turned his gaze toward Nona and Nina with a serious expression. He claimed that these two were the most exceptional of the bunch. When our hero asks why, the boy gives him a shocking answer. He reveals his predecessor was a man of incredible virtue and godlike strength. He's always been tuned into her every move, following her lead without a second thought. Ever since that day, he's been her shadow, and now his gaze shifts toward Nina and Nona. He speaks up with a heavy heart, reminding them that they're the last ones standing. Our MRC asks if building a new nation actually matters to them, and the boy gives a firm, resounding yes. In that moment, the MC realizes he and Lin are walking completely different paths. He claims independence is within reach, then turns to Melia, reminding her that the world's strongest hero is the one calling the shots. He tells her to cast her fears aside, and Millie nods in total agreement. With the deal sealed, Prime Minister Dennis declares that the meeting is officially over. He turns to Roy, giving him a nod of gratitude for the crucial intel. Roy snaps to attention and accepts the praise with a sharp salute. The king admits he made a massive blunder and should have let them handle the heroes from the start. From this moment forward, they are strictly on their own. Prime Minister Dennis nods in total agreement as the king continues his cold decree. He declares that only the renegade heroes remain, and they must be dealt with instantly. The targets are locked: the MC, Onizuka, and his allies Suzuhara and Wajima. Hunting them down across a country this massive is going to be an absolute nightmare. Roy turns to the king and reveals they've already picked up the trail, leaving his men in total shock. The king is delighted, praising the news as a massive victory. He barks out the order to seize Onizuka's squad and, if possible, eliminate them for good. But he insists they take Zeke with them, a command that leaves Roy completely speechless, surpassing even the power of the elite Imperial Guard. The king cuts him off, declaring that the reality is actually the complete opposite. Because let's be real, who else could possibly stand a chance against Onizuka? Prime Minister Dennis speaks up, claiming that even the mighty Commander Zeke would be pushed to his absolute limit against 3 legendary warriors. He suggests that his own heroes should dive headfirst into the battle. The king agrees and hands him total control over the savage Black Wolf army. There'll be no match for the unstoppable war machine led by Minister Roy. The crowd shudders at the mention of the Black Wolf, but the king locks eyes with Vali, certain that he knows exactly what he has to do. He swore he'd handle the negotiations with the hero's ally himself, Nakatani. The king commanded that they must deploy the entire army immediately. He gave a firm nod, but wondered if even an army of this size stood a chance. This is the strongest of the brave, the legendary daughter of the Mad King. A lone survivor of the dragon race and a horde of beastmen have rallied to their side. A ceasefire is their only option until this massive threat is neutralized. They have to deal with Onizuka first, and the king realized he was absolutely right. As they stepped onto the balcony, the king confessed he was still lost in confusion. He didn't get the point of summoning heroes, all while Naoki glared at them with intensity. The king kept talking, insisting they had to fulfill the heavy expectations of the masses. The king kept rambling, terrified that the entire balance of power was about to collapse. Chaos was brewing, so the heroes demanded to know exactly what Prime Minister Dennis was plotting. Was it another deadly dungeon or more trouble for our MC? He's completely over it, but suddenly, Prime Minister Dennis cut them off, offering a cold thanks to everyone for showing up. He dropped a bombshell. He wanted them to lead a massive victory parade through the capital. The crowd erupted in whispers. A parade? Our hero definitely wasn't in the mood for a celebration. He's reached his breaking point and just wants them to finally set him free. The Prime Minister admitted that he was asking for way too much from them. But if they refused, they'd be walking straight into a world of trouble. They demanded to know, what kind of threat was he actually talking about? Prime Minister Danius confirms the shocking truth. Our MC is the most famous missing man on the planet. But the real nightmare is the 3 new wildcards who have emerged, and they are completely out of control. To the terrified public, there is absolutely no difference between these monsters and the missing. Nagisa realizes the stakes, asking if they must prove to the world that they are the only true heroes left. Dennis warns that if the missing 9 cause a scene before the truth is revealed, it's game over. Their reputation would be trashed instantly, and Naoki can't help but let out a frustrated curse. He snaps that these guys just do whatever they want, and the Prime Minister nods in grim agreement. Dennis closes the distance, plants a heavy hand on Naoki's shoulder, and stares him down. But you're the one who can turn this whole disaster around, right? He asks, leaving Naoki paralyzed with fear. Suddenly, the mood shifts as Dennis admits he's been waiting way too long to finally unleash their power. Now, he'd proudly show off his squad to the entire world. He looks Naoki dead in the eye and declares he's the only man for the job. Having so many fearless warriors on their side was a total lucky fluke. Even with a plan, things can get messy, and that's when a true icon is needed. A magnetic hero like him is born for this, and Prime Minister Dana can't help but grin. Naoki smirks right back, but Nagisa and Saya are smelling something fishy. Minasi watches Akane like a hawk until she finally demands to know the truth. What the hell is the deal with those rogue heroes anyway? Minister Roy and his goons are actually in cahoots with Onizuka's crew. Meanwhile, Foreign Minister Vali is locked in a high-stakes deal with MC Manesi. Fine, let's talk terms, he declared, as she turned her focus straight to Akane. She desperately asked the one thing that mattered. Will he actually return? Akane stepped forward, closing the gap between them with a serious expression. In a quiet, intense voice, he asked if she would truly go with him. Manase was stunned by the offer, while the MC felt a weight lift off his shoulders. He was genuinely relieved that the beastmen and demons were finally working together. They had finally bridged the divide and found a path to peace. He understood the massive challenge of forging a brand new country, but their most important mission was to strive to build a home where every single person could live in harmony. He leaned back comfortably and told her that if things really worked that way, then a little bit of knowledge from his old world would be a total game changer. Lin asks about his past life, making him reflect on his modern lifestyle. He wondered if the magical tools used here were just like the tech back home. Are these tools common where you're from? She asked, her curiosity exploding. He confirms it, explaining that tools crafted with magic and skill are for everyone. These tools are everywhere, even for simple tasks like hauling heavy timber. He looks at the kids and says, even a small girl could carry it with no problem. That was the world he knew, but the young boy looks absolutely terrified. Lin calls it a dream world, but wonders if it causes any problems. Our hero realizes that raw individual power isn't the only thing that matters anymore. He admits it's almost impossible to picture such monstrously strong warriors back in his own world. But even without godlike strength, there are still plenty of ways to dominate the competition. Melia speaks up, wondering if the legendary heroes of that world were the ones crafting these tools. Our protagonist shakes his head, revealing a much more selfish truth. He loves being the only one with a special edge, and these tools would just destroy that perfect advantage. Besides, even if they tried to build them, it would take an eternity to finish. Suddenly, a brilliant spark of inspiration hits him. He realizes he could craft tools for daily life, leaving Lin curious about what he actually means. Right now, they're stuck scrubbing clothes by hand or using magic, but imagine if he could automate the whole thing. Our hero realizes magic can actually mimic modern tech, even something as simple as a washing machine. He could recreate every home appliance imaginable, but he'd need rare materials, magic stones, and a mountain of cash. Suddenly, Nona cries out, pointing toward a mysterious figure emerging from the distance. Nakatani's entire body goes rigid as he prepares for a fight. He wasn't in any shape for a confrontation, but he had to brace for the absolute worst. He demands to know who's there, and the stranger finally reveals himself. The man introduces himself as the high-ranking Minister of Foreign Affairs. He's a representative of the mighty Holy Empire of Valencia. His name is Vali Samayal, and he's come with a single goal: to negotiate. And his target is none other than the hero himself, Nakatani. Our hero's mind raced, desperate to uncover their hidden conditions. This meant war, a brutal, direct collision with the mighty empire. Folly stood his ground, shouting that they needed to keep their heads held high. If they were actually looking for a bloody massacre, they never would have shown up with such a tiny, weak force. One of the sisters spoke up, swearing to the MC that the man wasn't deceiving them, and that his words were worth their weight in gold. They gathered around the table, the atmosphere thick with suspense. He demanded the floor, insisting he reveal the top-secret intel he was carrying. And then the bombshell. The legendary hero Onizuka had officially joined the ranks. Nakatani stands tall among the elite ranks of the wandering heroes. Volley realizes they're completely in the dark and prepares to reveal the shocking truth. He silences the room with a single gesture as Lin and Nakatani wait in total suspense. Our hero demands to know the exact location of Onizuka and his squad. Valley confirms the news, revealing that Roy, the Empire's most brilliant mind, is on the case. This genius is tracking their every move, but there's an even bigger twist coming. Lin senses the danger and asks what's wrong, while the MC's heart begins to sink. The MC can tell by the tone of his voice that something is seriously off. Milius points out that knowing their location should be a relief, but the vibe is chilling. Does this mean they're still too weak to actually defeat their enemies? Valley didn't hesitate. He gave a sharp, confident nod. He declared that this very reason was exactly why they showed up today. Lin narrowed her eyes, asking if they were really there to settle the score. "You're not trying to force us into a bloodbath, are you?" Lin pressed, and Valley confirmed her suspicions. Lin immediately warned our hero that this was nothing but a deadly trap. Nakatani stepped forward, demanding to know the truth behind Valley's proposal. Was he actually handing this over for free, or was there a massive catch? Valley smirked, admitting that this was strictly a "you scratch my back, I scratch yours" deal. His first offer? A temporary truce until they finally hunt down and crush Onizuka. Milius spoke up, questioning if that simple deal was really all he wanted. Volley had his doubts, but he knew he could at least make a move. He swore an oath to keep every shocking secret hidden from the government's eyes. Lin insisted the risk was worth the reward, while the MC kept his eyes on the minister. The minister was dead serious about ignoring this rogue nation, and Lin wasn't backing down. She pressed forward, even though they were flying blind with zero guarantees. Valley nodded in total agreement, ready to reveal the next piece of the puzzle. He pointed out the fatal flaw. These people were starving for supplies and needed a miracle. To pull off a plan this massive, they'd need a mountain of resources to survive. The MC knew this was the key, but Valley cut him off, insisting that right now, these negotiations are the only thing that matters. If they fail, the Empire is finished, and Amelia prepares to make her move. It finally hit her. The entire empire's survival was hanging by a thread on this one choice. Valley flashed a wicked grin, asking if they were truly ready to go through with this. They could strike right now, but Onizuka had already wiped out 7 of their legendary heroes. They knew the terrifying price of failure better than anyone else. Lin turned to the MC, demanding to know what he was actually implying. Nakatani confessed that he'd almost never seen someone die and then claw their way back to life. And the cold truth was, they were far too weak to unleash their real power right now. Volley warned that the Empire's forces were completely fractured and spread thin. To make matters worse, the remaining heroes were far too arrogant and stubborn to control, but they refused to retreat, claiming they still had more. Forget revenge. There are far more critical matters demanding our attention right now. Milia's gaze drifted to the crowd of people huddled outside the window. They were absolutely petrified, and Milia started walking right up to the glass, announcing that she finally understood everything. Valley insisted that they couldn't stop now and had to keep moving. Milia scoffed, claiming those documents were completely useless to someone like him. The MC stared her down, revealing she'd smelled a rat from the moment the meeting began. Valley surged to his feet, clutching the secret files in his trembling hand, asking if it was the tea leaves that finally exposed his secret. Ominous white crows erupted around him as he roared that they were no match for his strength. Shock and awe gripped every single person in the room. Milia turned to the elf, her voice trembling as she demanded the truth. "You mean to tell me they actually survived?" With a solemn nod, the elf confirmed their wildest suspicions. He revealed they belonged to the legendary race supposedly wiped out 4 centuries ago. Lin's mind was reeling, unable to make sense of this chaotic revelation. Not only did the phantom race survive, but this elf is a high-ranking minister in a human-dominated empire. She questioned how they lasted this long, but the elf coldly stated that in 100 years, no one would even care. Our hero demanded to know how they could mimic anyone if they've looked like this from the very start. History might have been simpler that way, but the elf just shrugged it off as being totally devoid of art. Our MC was completely mesmerized by the elf's breathtaking artistry. The elf declared him the greatest hero to ever live. She insisted that they seal their bond with a brand new contract immediately. All of this went down during the legendary Parade of Heroes. Naoki stood firm, positioned right next to the massive fluttering flag. I couldn't help but ask why Naoki was acting so incredibly bitter. He finally cracked, explaining exactly why he was in such a foul mood. Apparently, a huge group of girls had suddenly vanished without a trace. He was losing it, because those girls were meant to be his personal harem. While Naoki seethed with anger, Saiya and Nagisa watched him with total judgment. A carriage comes thundering down the road right toward him. Our hero fixes his gaze on the path ahead. The kids shout his name, and he turns back with a warm, confident smile. Nakatani and Lin are right there, sharing stories with the group. His eyes lock onto Milia. He flashes her a grin, and her face lights up instantly. As she beams back, the girls share a knowing look. They can't help but smile as someone admits these guys never stop being impressive. Milia nods, realizing their squad is growing stronger by the second. With new allies by their side, our hero looks up, his mind racing with thoughts of Milio. Milia was spot on. They were being flooded with all the gear and gold they could handle. They had high-ranking allies planted right in the Empire's heart, including that influential elf minister. Milius made it clear, though, this massive favor meant they had a mountain of work ahead of them. Our protagonist didn't hesitate, fully agreeing that the stakes were higher than ever. He knew Onizuka and the rest of the squad had to make their move right now. But suddenly, he spotted a group of mysterious figures lurking in the distance. He froze in disbelief, demanding to know who these strangers were. As they got closer, he realized he was looking at 3 of his very own classmates. "Sashiro," he yelled, "how did you guys even find this place?" The air turned cold as Lin's body stiffened with pure, unadulterated dread. He rings him up and drops the big news. They've finally arrived. He confirms they've made it, and Minas is ready for action. It's been an absolute eternity since they last stood face to face. She gives a heartfelt nod, agreeing that way too much time has passed. Tears well up in her eyes as she whispers about how long it's truly been. She brushes away the tears, overjoyed to hear his voice, while Lin steps right in front of Nakatani. Tony demands to know why they've shown up as fear grips the girl, but suddenly Nina and Nona lunge at our hero. The sisters' glares are sharp enough to kill, forcing Akane to step in and remind everyone this is just a friendly visit. She asks if they can finally sit down and talk, and Nakatani gives her the green light. He's left scratching his head, wondering why they're here and why there are three of them. Seeing the three of them, he worried they were in deep trouble again, but Akane told him to relax. She pulled the girls into a warm hug, claiming they were just taking a little sick leave. Our hero was stunned. Sick leave? He began to wonder if she was actually reading his mind. He nodded along as Akane smiled, explaining she just wanted to make the situation easier for them to grasp, and she promised that she would definitely teach him her ways too. With that settled, the group finally stepped inside the room. The sisters were still clinging to our protagonist, refusing to let go for even a second. Akane gave a confident nod and announced that it was time for the very first recording. It was a mandatory requirement, and she thanked him from the bottom of her heart for his help. She admitted she should have told him sooner, but she just never had the chance. She was paralyzed with fear over what they'd done, but she couldn't have been more wrong. She was inches away from a cold grave, and the MC admits it's a relief she's still breathing. He checks to see if her arm is fully healed, and she beams with gratitude as she confirms she's okay. Turning his gaze to Lin, he demands to know why the three of them were traveling as a pack. Akane steps forward, ready to reveal the secret behind their alliance. In the entire city of Minas, her sister was the only family she had left to protect. Minace reaches out, her voice trembling as she begs him to return to them. She knows she's asking for the impossible, but she just can't face the world alone. Tears stream down her face as she sobs that they're just stronger when they're together. The MC looks her in the eye and promises to make it happen. He's never coming back, and Minasi solemnly accepts that cold reality. Suddenly, Akane drops a bombshell. Why don't they just welcome them in? Accept them? Minase gasps, her mind reeling at the suggestion. Even our hero is left completely stunned by this insane proposal. Akane presses on, asking if this was their ultimate goal all along. They're laying the foundation to build a brand new nation, a land where there's finally a place for someone like him to belong. He stares at her, wondering just how much those eyes can truly see. What is the terrifying secret behind the true nature of her observation skill? She smirks and tells him he's finally asking the right questions. The moment of truth arrives as Akane finally opens up. She reveals that her hidden gift is the power of absolute vision. If she chooses, she can invade anyone's mind and see their darkest secrets. Her observation is so sharp that she can track his every single move. With her abilities fully awakened, he finally trusts that she isn't a foe. As for being enemies, our hero shrugs it off like it's nothing. He figures if they were truly at odds, they wouldn't be hanging out like this. He can't help but admit that her power is seriously top tier. Akane claims it sounds great on paper, but it's actually a massive burden. A burden? Akane, you've got to be kidding me. Hane fires back that they need to understand because you're blind to what you don't even consider. If you don't focus, your own skill limitations will keep the truth hidden from your eyes forever. Our hero asks the big question. Are they really here to help him master these insane powers? Akane smirks and says, that's only the beginning, but first, they need to hear her wild proposal. She'll scour the Empire's secret archives to break the seal, leaving Melia grinning and wondering just how far those eyes can see. Minace turns to him, desperate to know the truth about his mysterious gift. Does he really have the power to pull objects toward him like a magnet? He can literally steal the skills of others through absorption, leaving Manesi to cry out in total shock. He explains that her powers vanished the moment he seized them for himself. He offers a quick apology as the realization hits her. That's exactly why she couldn't save Sabami's arm. She brushed it off, claiming her healing wouldn't have been enough to save her arm anyway. Sabami could only watch them, his face twisted in pure confusion. Akane made it crystal clear. The MC's skills were nothing short of a disaster. But that girl? Her power was locked behind a seal, and Milius couldn't help but smirk. Sabami's eyes widened as he stammered, "Wait, she's sealed?" Akane dropped a bombshell. Nakatani and the others were planning to build an entire kingdom on this spot. They were determined to restore their lost might alone, leaving Tsubami completely blindsided. Akane didn't care who was on the team as long as they got the job done. "So we just need to go out there and rack up a high score?" the MC asked. Was she really planning to tag along? Akane stood up and told him to take a deep breath and relax. Her ability was incredibly handy, but it wasn't meant for the heat of combat. She brushed past our protagonist and told him exactly what she was doing. She was heading for cover, staying true to her cautious nature. She promised to return with intel, joking that they'd have plenty of fun without her. She gave a quick wave and disappeared, leaving Manesi calling after her. Manasa shouted her name, standing there with Tsubami in total confusion as Akane looked back. The girls prepped for their departure as Akane bid the hero a final farewell. Once they cleared the city gates, Akane exhaled in pure stress while Manasi demanded answers. Akane turned with a serious gaze, revealing she'd witnessed something invisible to the naked eye. She knew the truth now. Every single member of the group was present. Even a fleeting glimpse was enough to know those things were absolute nightmares. She's just relieved to be breathing, but Manasi is certain that Nakatani would never commit such an atrocity. Tsubami turns to Akane, desperate to know if the situation was really that dire. Akane gives a grim nod, confirming his worst fears. She confesses she got lucky, surviving only by playing a dangerous game of deception while they suppressed her powers. She bluffed about knowing the Empire's secret to breaking the seal, knowing that without that lie, they'd be totally worthless to their enemies. Tsubami realizes the cold truth. They're nothing more than pawns to be exploited. Minace tries to argue, insisting that despite everything, Nakatani and the others are still. They were summoned to this world as a team, so they have to be on the same side, right? Suddenly, Izuka snaps and lunges forward, crushing the man's throat in a death grip. He spat that he was absolute garbage and threw him aside like trash. After being tossed away, Onizuka's eyes pierced through him with a deadly glare. He slumped onto the edge of a jagged rock, hunched over in total defeat. He hissed a curse as the man demanded to know why he kept attacking. He's been hunting these bandits day in and day out, but how long can he keep this up? Onizuka finally snaps, screaming at them to open their eyes and wake up. He questions if this is all just a dream, but the reality is far more terrifying. Onizuka explains they've been thrust into a world where every rule has been shattered. In a normal world, the MC wouldn't have even bothered to lay a hand on him. He asks what's left for them now that the way back home has been sealed off. They're being hunted like prey, but Onizuka figures if this is all a dream, he might as well go wild. He reaches out toward the terrified girl, but she cowers back, begging him to stop. Onizuka declares that heroes have the right to take lives, his hand dripping with fresh blood. But the other guy snaps back, refusing to accept that twisted logic. Onizuka flashes a manic grin, mocking him for not understanding his true power yet. Since they're still clueless, Onizuka violently shoves them out of his way. He warns them that both the Empire and the heroes are closing in for the kill. He knows that if they can just unlock more power, they'll be completely unstoppable. No one would be able to touch them, as the memory of Naoki burns in his mind. Thinking of Nakatani and Roy, he declares that they have no choice but to become powerful. The tension was electric as the clash loomed. There was no turning back. Now, our hero braced himself, wondering what kind of chaos was coming next. He stood there stunned, thinking to himself, what a total surprise. The elf approached with a smirk, knowing full well they'd be keeping a close eye on him. MC questioned the ridiculous costume, but the elf shot back that his usual clothes just wouldn't work. He couldn't possibly talk business in his royal imperial gear, and MC had to admit he had a point. While Nina and Nona rested inside, he pointed out the massive progress they'd already made. They'd achieved so much in just a few days, and these supplies would finally make the city flourish. Malia cut through the excitement, reminding them that the road ahead was still long. She knew he had work to do, and the elf just closed his eyes, lost in thought. He locked eyes with them and gave a firm nod, declaring that Onizuka had to be taken down. Our MC was completely caught off guard as the elf stepped forward. After a brief pause, the elf revealed the truth. The heroes were finally ready to strike. It was an entire army of heroes against just 3 of them. But Onizuka's power was reaching terrifying new heights. Melia just smirked, asking if any of those so-called heroes could even stand a chance against him. He turned toward our protagonist and reminded him that he was nothing more than a withered old man. Suddenly, his form shifted into a frail elder as he began to speak. He warned that even the most elite heroes would be pushed to their absolute limits. The man claimed they'd been traveling on foot every single day, which sounded absolutely insane. It was madness, but he simply shrugged it off, explaining that after everything they'd been through, Onizuka's power was surging as he pierced them with a lethal stare. He growled that next time, he wouldn't even need to move a muscle to beat them. The thugs looked at each other, trembling with pure confusion and doubt. In that split second, Onizuka prepared his next move. He shoves the thick brush aside with a wild, confident smirk. The group froze in place, their jaws dropping in total shock. Right before their eyes stood a mysterious hidden building. "What the hell is that?" they stammered, while Onizuka stood his ground. He marched toward the entrance and declared they were heading inside right now. Terrified, the man whimpered, "What do you mean we have to go in there?" They were completely surrounded, and he demanded to know what they were even doing there. "What's your goal?" he sneered, flashing a grin. "Because these fools just signed their own death warrants. They were doomed the second they stepped foot here, and he hoped their end would be quick." He brought up the last victim, the poor soul who was melted down and beaten while still alive. Onizuka barked that they should be damn grateful that he was the one putting them out of their misery. Without warning, he lunges forward and starts tearing through the thugs like a whirlwind. Men were dropping dead instantly, leaving the survivor paralyzed with pure, unadulterated shock. Onizuka turns his fury on him next, forcing the man to stare at the corpses of his fallen comrades. Suddenly, Izuka slams onto the pavement, his face twisted into a mask of pure insanity. The thug screams for the guys inside to help, but Onizuka cuts him off, telling him that he didn't give a damn, grabbing 2 thugs by their skulls and smashing them together with bone-crushing force. He declared that he'd be the one to lead the charge. He barked at his crew, telling them it was time to move out right now. He stared back in disbelief, asking if he was actually for real. Onizuka stepped into the room and made a bold proclamation. This place was their new territory as they marched down the long corridor. Onizuka sighed with pure frustration, realizing something pathetic. He wasn't gaining a single thing from fighting these losers. These absolute lightweights weren't even worth his time. Someone lunged at him from the shadows, screaming insults at the top of their lungs. It was time for him to pay the ultimate price as he spun around. He turned his head only to be blinded by a spray of fresh blood. Onizuka just stared ahead, his eyes cold and completely unfazed. With that icy stare, they finally reached the massive wall. Onizuka claimed this was their destination, leaving the other guy to wonder how such a room was even built. It looked exactly like a disgusting goblin den. Suddenly, a goblin spoke up, agreeing that he hit the nail right on the head. The monster hissed, mocking them for being such loud and obnoxious guests. Terror gripped the group, but Onizuka couldn't help but let out a sinister smirk. He looked thrilled to see a room swarming with goblins of every size, while their leader chuckled at how ridiculous these humans looked. The beast then offered them a chilling choice. They were more than welcome to stay. Musicus lunges forward, tearing into the goblin with zero hesitation. He executes the beast on the spot and delivers a cold-blooded ultimatum. He declares that the time for games is over. They have a choice to make. They can swear loyalty to him as their leader, or they can perish. It's death for anyone else, because these pathetic fools are nothing to him. Izuka watches the chaos unfold with a truly wicked smirk. Anyone foolish enough to challenge their power is already a dead man. Over at the massive parade, the heroes of Nakatani are finally arriving. Tony strides through the city streets, but he stops dead in his tracks. Naoki beams with excitement and waves to a familiar face in the distance. Suddenly, Minazi sensed a presence and whipped her head around. Her eyes locked onto something strange, lurking in the distance. She urgently signaled Akina, desperate for her to see it too. They argued if it was a hat or a sword, laughing off the fact they'd completely ditched the parade. After being trapped in the palace, they were finally unleashed into the capital for a wild shopping spree. It was a total explosion of freedom, and honestly, who could blame them? The scene shifts to a massive table deep within the castle walls. Prime Minister Danny stood before the board, his voice booming with intensity. He faced the boys, claiming he was thrilled to have them all gathered. But Naoki wasn't buying it, demanding to know why they'd been summoned so urgently. Was he really planning to drag them back into another public parade? This time, he needed to make absolutely sure his head count was perfect. But Prime Minister Dainese shut that idea down immediately. He declared that after their big debut in the capital, the entire world needed to hear of their heroic feats. But Naoki was skeptical, demanding to know exactly what feats he was talking about. The Prime Minister explained that in this massive empire, local lords usually keep things running in harmony, but some wild, lawless territories have completely spiraled out of control. Deep, dark woods, like the Dingat Forest, are the perfect example of this chaos. These woods are crawling with ruthless bandits who are strangling the empire's trade routes. The people are suffering, and the entire empire is reaching its breaking point. Naoki nods in agreement, but he's got one burning question. He looks the Prime Minister in the eye and asks, should we just wipe them all out? Prime Minister Denise gives a cold nod, confirming that's exactly the plan. In fact, reports are already flooding in that a massive horde has been completely annihilated. Suddenly, Ziggy leaps to his feet with a burst of pure energy. He beams at the group, introducing himself as the powerhouse commander of the entire army. The room goes dead silent, but Ziggy just lets out a booming laugh. He tells them to relax and drop their guard. But Naoki isn't buying it, staring back with total disbelief. Feeling the tension, Ziggy lets out a heavy, awkward sigh. He shrugged it off, claiming he'd grown totally numb to this kind of chaos. Their target was a rogue hero, a powerhouse with strength that was absolutely off the charts. There was zero room for doubt, and Naoki felt the urge to scream the protagonist's name at the top of his lungs. But Ziggy cut him off, insisting they stay out of it, since it wasn't their fight to pick. Onizuka was already on the move, dealing with those punks himself. He thrust his hands forward, ready to unleash whatever power he was hiding. With a wicked grin, he mocked them by saying he was terrified, before revealing the real problem was far worse. This guy, Onizuka, was clearly the new kingpin on the block, and he was building a massive army of thugs. Even without his leadership, these splinter groups were popping up everywhere in massive numbers. If these regional gangs ever united, they'd have a 1,000-man army ready to tear the city apart. Right now, this is nothing short of a massive mobilization for war. Pure terror gripped the heroes as Ziggy leaned in, ready to lay out the brutal truth. He commanded them to march straight into the heart of this target. The entire room stood paralyzed, staring at him in absolute shock. Ziggy declared that only the Black Wolf Army and their own elite squad would take the lead. This was their burden to carry, though a few allies might join the slaughter. Naoki spat that they didn't need help, while Onizuka finally reached his limit. Ziggy just flashed a sinister grin, locking eyes with him. He agreed completely, confirming that every move they'd made was for this exact moment. But they needed a real reason to bleed, and the Prime Minister was there to give it to them. Prime Minister Dana drops a bombshell. They already knew everything. The Salisford family is dead and gone, leaving their massive empire up for grabs. The boy narrows his eyes, demanding to know exactly what he's getting at. Dennis cuts him off, admitting their forces have been absolutely decimated lately. Now he's convinced they finally have the raw power to step up. He's ready to welcome them as the newest lords of their sacred empire. Everyone is paralyzed with shock as the boy asks what this really means. A noble title, all in exchange for handing over Onizuka. Dennis confirms the deal, and the room explodes with pure, unfiltered rage. Trading nobility for Onizuka, he has no intention of fighting this war. If Onizuka actually goes through with this, they'll have to crush him to stop his climb to nobility. Naoki flashes a twisted, manic grin as he's told he has to wait his turn. Is he really going to murder his way into the aristocracy, while Sia and Nagisa sit there in stunned silence? Finally, the tension snaps as someone demands to know what the hell he's even talking about. He needs a brutal reality check on the world he's living in, while Manasi watches his every move. Hain realized the moment of truth was here. They were finally gearing up for battle. Meanwhile, Masawa is absolutely devouring her food like it's her last meal. The boy asks the ultimate question. Do they really have to hunt down Onizuka to become nobles? When asked if he wanted a title of his own, Masawa shot the idea down without hesitation. He reveals the truth. She was actually one of Yukari's most loyal companions. He demands an explanation, only to realize a secret vow had already been sworn. He made a solemn promise to bring joy back to those trapped in this lifeless void. His plan starts with crafting a deck of cards while he prays for a legendary title. With that rank, he'd finally have the authority to create the ultimate board game. But as of right now, his current abilities are completely and utterly useless. He refuses to back down and vows to find a way, firing up his friend's spirit. He shouts for him to never lose hope while silently thanking them for the brutal training. Every single warrior is pushing their limits, grinding to reach god-tier strength. As their power surges, Ziggy calmly sparks a cigar and watches the fire burn. He looks at their burning passion and mutters that it's damn good to be young. He casually offers a cigar to Roy, who's just standing there. Roy stands his ground and refuses to take it. Roy won't smoke while on duty, so Ziggy laughs and calls him a total bore. Then, his eyes lock onto the guys, staring him down. They're all gathered right at the entrance. Loki scoffs, declaring he doesn't care how hard everyone has been working, because they'll never even touch the level of his raw, natural talent. Nagisa and Saya immediately whip their heads to the side, right toward the spot where Kane, Minas, and Tsubami are waiting. Akan seems completely lost in thought until Nakatani suddenly asks a question. He confessed that he was still completely clueless about what they were truly capable of. The sisters locked their eyes onto him with an intense, piercing gaze. Perched right on his lap, Nina playfully asked if he wanted to learn their secrets, while Nona demanded to know what he was waiting for. She leaned in close, whispering right into his ear that they were ready to strike at a moment's notice. Grace explained that the girls' true power didn't come from fancy techniques, but from their insane raw speed and peak physical conditioning. Our hero stared at them, convinced they had simply endured some brutal, high-level training. He flashed back to their very first encounter, finally realizing why they moved like absolute lightning on the battlefield. Grace insisted it was pure skill, a level of mastery so profound it was almost impossible to comprehend. He wondered what would happen if he triggered his absorption ability, questioning if the results would be truly beyond his wildest dreams. Just imagine, Grace revealed that their secret was a deep emotional link, where they shared every single feeling with one another. Is that it? The rest of the team needs to step up, our hero thought, while Gray continued his explanation. He insisted that this power becomes absolutely broken when two fighters work in perfect harmony. Lin looked unconvinced, questioning if such a move could actually qualify as a legendary, unique skill. Flashbacks of the girls suffering in that cage haunted Gray as he prepared his response. He refused to talk about it, demanding they focus on the skill at hand instead. The goal was to secure the ability first, then grill Melia about what Gray was truly hiding. He suddenly unleashed his power, showing everyone exactly what he was made of. It was a vicious claw strike, sprouting razor-sharp talons to shred through any defense. This massive damage buff was the missing piece to make his entire skill set truly unstoppable. Our protagonist agreed, but he had one burning question. Doesn't this also jack up his physical strength? Melia smirks, declaring that things just got a whole lot more interesting. Suddenly, a status window erupts into view, revealing the legendary ogre god. A flood of insane skills appears, from lightning strikes and ice crystals to transparency and the deadly black burial. It's a never-ending list of corrosive flames, dragon techniques, and the devastating wave of light. Melia explains that if he chains his claw strike with these other abilities, the power of both skills will skyrocket. Lin gasps in shock, asking if such a broken combo is actually real. Gray confirms it's the truth, but warns him to be smart, while our hero affectionately pats the sisters' heads. Their tails wag with pure joy as he reaches out and places his hand firmly on Gray, coldly activating his most powerful move, absorption. He immediately pulls up his menu to witness his brand new god-tier powers. He realized in an instant that he was looking at a high-tier skill. He saw the claw strike's massive defensive potential, though it would leave the target absolutely mangled. These thorns combined with the ogre god Onizuka create a lethal long-range strike, and Minasi's healing range just skyrocketed. Even his carrying capacity gets a massive boost, letting him haul unbelievable weight. Hold on! He looks at Lin and Amelia, and Lin reveals that every dragon technique now has massive range. Amelia chimes in, promising that every skill is about to evolve into something even more terrifying. Our MRC asks if she's absolutely certain, and her response is instant. She confirms it with a nod, wishing she had absorbed that claw striker much earlier. He tries to protest, but Nona cuts him off to remind him of their loyalty. Nina backs her up, declaring they're following him forever because he's the ultimate badass. They were the absolute strongest, and Gray just smirked at them, calling them quite the duo. Lin turns to the MC, admitting she has no idea how things work back in the human world. But here, she promises that legions of people would follow him to the ends of the earth. He's about to witness that loyalty firsthand as a group of children rushes toward them. One young boy stops and points a trembling finger directly at Nakatani. The MC closes his eyes and folds his hands, desperately trying to pull himself together. Melia watches him with a gentle smile, her heart full as he begins to speak. He confesses his greatest fear, that when the time comes, he'll fail everyone who believes in him. Melia tells him to stop worrying right now because she knows he's going to succeed. A voice calls out to Onizuka, checking to see if he's still holding up okay. Onizuka presses him once more, demanding to know how he's holding up. He spins toward the group and roars that he's never felt better in his life. Despite the terror in his heart, Onizuka bellows at the goblins to keep moving. Calling them total idiots, he realizes it's finally time to push his power to the absolute limit. He declares he's been idling for way too long as they charge forward on their journey. A voice rings out, insisting they need to sprint toward victory at breakneck speed. Ziggy Caldroy steps up, demanding to know what the hell is going on. Ziggy snaps back, claiming he doesn't see any reason for this chaos. He sees absolutely no point in rushing headfirst into things like a madman. Roy shoots him a lethal glare, growling that he doesn't understand his logic at all. He shot back, telling him he seriously needed to chill out. He insisted there was absolutely no reason to go charging in like a madman. Roy demanded to know why they were stalling, but ZD just smirked, saying the answer was staring him in the face. They were the Empire's ultimate weapon, the most elite unit in existence, and for once, Roy couldn't disagree. He let out a dark laugh, glad that Roy wasn't putting up a fight for once. After all, these soldiers were way easier to control than those unpredictable heroes. Roy's eyes narrowed as he asked what he was plotting, while Ziggy just flashed a wicked grin. He chuckled, asking what it mattered if those heroes slaughtered each other to the last man. Who cares if they show up an hour late to a total bloodbath? Suddenly, they ground to a halt as Ziggy threw his head back in a mocking gesture. Roy spun around, his eyes scanning the faces of his entire squad. Smiles broke out across the group as Ziggy admitted he knew exactly what kind of legend he was dealing with. It was clear as day this band of heroes was a wild, uncontrollable force of nature. But beneath the surface, Ziggy was shaking, sensing a dark shadow looming over them. Something was definitely off. After all, the true powerhouse always makes a late entrance, right? When Roy demanded to know his secret, Ziggy just flashed a cocky grin and fired back. He joked that being late didn't matter, because these warriors were absolute monsters in battle. There's no telling what chaos they'll unleash, as Ziggy stared intensely at his own reflection in his flask. Roy snapped at him, telling him to shut his mouth and stop spewing garbage. Ziggy just laughed it off, asking Roy why he couldn't just lighten the hell up for once. He shoved the flask into his hands, muttering that the drink was on him. It tasted amazing, but Roy realized Onizuka was now a monster that no hero could ever hope to defeat as they moved through the hall. The scarred man pointed his finger, announcing that he was next in line. Next up! They wasted no time and charged up the stairs. He burst into the chamber where Onizuka was waiting, looming on his throne, claiming he'd heard whispers of a new gang forming. But as the name was being spoken, Onizuka cut him off mid-sentence, showing he couldn't care less. Right then and there, he demanded to know exactly what he was capable of. He swore he had the perfect trick up his sleeve, and it was a total game-changer. Onizuka reached out, offering his hand in a tense moment of truth. But it was too late. The man had already suffered a devastating, fatal blow. Onizuka claimed that once the flames took hold, even death itself couldn't claim its victim. Calling him a liar, he demanded to know his true skill, only for Onizuka to reveal he could blast pure fire. He was stunned by the flames, questioning if that single ability would actually be enough. Onizuka shook his head, growling that he needed way more power than that. He rose to his feet and stepped forward, explaining that combining skills was the secret to ultimate power. Onizuka cursed under his breath, frustrated that nothing but pathetic trash was heading their way. They decided right then and there to take him down on their own. They either welcome him into their ranks or end his life. Honestly, he couldn't care less. He hauls the corpse away and demands Suzuhara make a final decision right now. It's a miracle Onizuka didn't slaughter the survivors, but the rumors of his cruelty are spreading fast. He warns that he'll grind them all into mincemeat, but he's suddenly cut off mid-sentence. "Keep your voice down," he hisses. "Those idiots in the hall actually believe they're the chosen ones." He whispers in the shadows, certain that Onizuka has finally snapped and lost his mind. Just standing next to the guy is enough to make your blood run cold with pure terror. He realizes the terrifying truth. Without him, they wouldn't stand a ghost of a chance against the Empire. He grills Wajima, wondering if Onizuka intentionally left them behind for a reason. Did he dump these pathetic recruits on them because he thinks they're too weak for real combat? Wajima stares him down, demanding to know if he's actually for real. Without a word, he spins around and trails right behind Onizuka. Suzuhara cuts him off mid-sentence, declaring his resolve. He's taking the lead, because if he doesn't, they're all doomed. They'll end up just like those losers. Does he get it now? Even if they manage to crawl back to their normal school lives, he'd never be able to show his face to anyone ever again. So he's stepping up to do what needs to be done. Majima calls out to him, but he just shuts everything out. He shuts his eyes tight, ready for the hero's final charge. They galloped forward, their powerful steeds thundering across the terrain. Akane grips her hat tight, charging full throttle toward the heat of battle. He shouts that they're closing in, glancing back at his allies. He tells Naoki that these ruthless criminals must face judgment without a second of delay. They've survived many trials together, but this mission feels far more dangerous. Naoki nods, understanding the stakes, but he still has one major worry. He asks if they should finally figure out a real plan to take down Onizuka. A true hero could never ignore the absolute chaos Onizuka has unleashed. He remains unshakable, staying true to his word until the very end. They surge ahead into the distance, with Akane and Manase riding close behind. The commander finally sides with Naoki, admitting he rushed in too fast. But Kitajima lets out a roar. "What?" he screams. "What exactly are you seeing out there?" Kitajima fires back that there were supposed to be 1,000 soldiers at most, but his Hawkeye skill reveals a massive, overwhelming force far beyond that. It's a death trap. He panics, shouting, "What the hell is going on? This is a total nightmare. There are just way too many of them to handle." He stares them down and asks, "You seriously think that's all of them? Is that the end of it? Or is an even bigger army heading our way right now?" Then it clicks. He remembers that incredibly suspicious guy they met earlier. That man swore he'd bring his own elite troops to back them up. This might be their only shot at finally leveling the playing field. Naoki lunges forward, screaming for the squad to strike, while Kitajima reels in shock. Manase bellows at Naoki, desperate for him to hold his ground for just 1 second. Wouldn't it be smarter to wait for the wolf pack to arrive and bolster their ranks? After they unite, the commander backs him up and issues a booming order to the troops. He commands the entire squad to fall in behind Naoki, insisting that every soul counts. She snaps, demanding to know why their fate is being decided for them yet again. Is this some kind of sick joke? The heroes wonder, their suspicion reaching a breaking point. But Nakatani stands firm, declaring that he's entrusting the entire mission to him. Graham Gray stares him down, asking if he's absolutely certain about this massive gamble. Our hero gives a firm nod, keeping it completely real with his answer. His back was against the wall, but he knew deep down that he was the only one who could pull this off. A group of kids swarm Gray, begging him to play, and he gives them a knowing smile. There was nothing to fear, as our MC shows his gratitude, while Lin shouts for the kids to stay out of trouble. He rings up Milia to double-check the timing, and when she confirms the error, Lin senses something is horribly wrong. Our protagonist grits his teeth and admits that things are definitely going south. He stares up at the clouds, a chilling gut feeling telling him that a storm is brewing. Meanwhile, the heroes are locked in a brutal showdown against Onizuka's ruthless thugs. An attacker lunges at Nagisa, but she meets his gaze with eyes full of pure, cold fury. She strikes with blinding speed, ending his life with a single devastating blow. Saya unleashes her sword and completely obliterates the bandit. Nagisa locks eyes with her before they both rush into the building. They're stalking down the hallway when he suddenly stops dead. Onizuka shouts out, "What the hell is happening?" He can't stop wondering what's causing that massive racket outside. It turns out to be a group of fools he knows all too well. He bellows out the names, Onizuka and Suzuhara. Alexandra Atsuma Naoki declares that she's finally ready. Naoki screams his name, demanding to know why he did it. Why did he murder Suzuki back in Tazima? Onizuka shrugs it off, claiming there wasn't even a real motive behind his actions. They were just pathetic weaklings who never stood a ghost of a chance. Their luck ran out the moment they crossed his path, and Naoki is absolutely fuming with rage. Since this place is a total bore, this little distraction is a massive stroke of luck. He starts weighing his options, wondering if he should just cash out right now. Selling them off seems like a plan, since he can just build a brand new deck whenever he wants. But he quickly realizes these cards aren't even worth a single penny yet. He needs to grind way harder, then turns to Yagami with a look of pure jealousy. He's obsessed with Yagami's god-tier alchemy that can create literally anything out of thin air. But Yagami fires back, saying alchemy is nothing compared to Suzuki's insane ability to see the future. "At least you can actually fight with that thing," he laughed, scratching his head as he scanned the area. With a wide grin, he admitted he never imagined foresight would be this lethal in the heat of battle. While he valued a sharp mind over raw magic, he confessed that he was finally starting to feel like himself again. He looked down, admitting that the woman's tragic death had hit him harder than he could ever imagine. The gruesome image of her severed head flashed in their minds, but he suddenly bolted upright and roared. "We have to snap out of it," he screamed. "Stay positive, because any one of us could be the next to die." He told them to listen close, because he'd been cooking up a plan, raising a finger to declare that cards were a stroke of genius. "But what about chess or shogi?" he asked, realizing this world was completely missing those legendary games. He was absolutely stunned, calling him a total genius before suggesting they build their own versions of those classics. They could make a killing with games like Go or Reversi, and he eagerly agreed that this was their ticket to power. Foresight would be a massive advantage, and he admitted his own skill wasn't exactly top tier. It might not be the flashiest ability, but he promised to more than make up for it. Armed with his pro-gamer knowledge, he vowed they'd become filthy rich millionaires. They'd celebrate their success until they collapsed, sealing their pact with a firm handshake. Yagami wiped his eyes and demanded to know why, his hand reaching for his hilt. He drew his sword, shouting that they didn't deserve to die in such a pathetic way. He stepped toward Onizuka, reminding him of the sacred promise he'd made. They were supposed to build a gaming empire right here in this new world. He charged in for the kill, yelling that they were going to strike it rich together. But Onizuka didn't give a damn, staring back with cold, empty eyes. Yagami's blade shatters into a million pieces as he struck down. He spits out a mouthful of crimson, leaving Manesi frozen in pure shock. A blood-curdling scream echoes through the air, but it's not coming from his throat. Onizuka bellows that garbage like him has no right to dream, his face contorted with insane rage. With a terrifying glare, he declares that in this world the weak are worth absolutely nothing. Naomi gazes at him, her heart breaking, as her eyes well up with tears. Onizuka sneers at them, demanding to know what's wrong now. Didn't they have the guts to kill him? They better make their move. He dares them to strike, announcing that he finally sees the truth. He finally understands the reality. They are nothing but pure nightmares. Paralyzed by pure terror, Mizawa collapses helplessly to the floor. Onizuka looks down at her and mockingly asks, "What's the matter?" She shrieks in agony, screaming that Yukari never deserved to be murdered. She pounces on him with everything she has, refusing to let her friend die at the hands of a monster. He effortlessly sidesteps her strike, his face twisting into a sadistic, mocking grin. "That rich brat," he sneers. "She was just a spoiled princess, hiding behind her family's wealth. But in this world, money and status don't mean a damn thing." He strikes her with a brutal blow, sending her body crashing violently into the wall. Through the pain, she screams that he's wrong, no matter what family she was born into. With tears streaming down her face, she cries out that she never used her status for her own gain. No matter the world she's in, the burning resolve in her eyes never wavers. She stood as a fearless warrior until the very end, staring down every nightmare without flinching. Onizuka lunges forward, mocking her by snarling that her tragic death meant absolutely nothing. He claims it cost him nothing, but then Nadisa shuts him up with a devastating strike. The blow sends him spiraling through the air as he screams in a fit of pure rage. He howls at the top of his lungs that their time has finally run out. Without warning, Suzuhara and Wajim launch a brutal ambush on Magisa from the inside. Trembling in shock, she can only gasp out a single, desperate question. "Why?" Suzuhara strikes her again, his face a mask of agony as tears stream down his cheeks. With a voice breaking from the pain, he cries out that they simply can't go on like this. Her options had vanished. Did she even grasp the danger she was in? She moved like lightning, barely dodging his ferocious assault. He questioned if Suzuhara and Wajima had always possessed such monstrous strength. But the answer was a cold, definitive no. Suzuhara shouted that they had already crossed the point of no return. He suddenly lunged forward and ripped the sword right out of her hands. Without a second thought, he hurled the blade away like it was garbage. He let out a chilling laugh, realizing the twisted reality of their situation. Their tragic fate had been set in stone a long time ago. Ever since that fateful day, he knew there was something dark lurking within. In their twisted world, they were never the ones meant to be heroes. They were the types who would never, ever receive a standing ovation from the public, but they didn't care. They were soaking up every single second of the thrill. They lived with a wild intensity, acting as if the world was ending tonight. Other people's feelings didn't mean a single thing to them. They didn't even give a damn about the consequences waiting for them in the future. They swapped those secret photos for a stack of cold, hard cash. He smirked, telling him it was an absolute pleasure doing business together. Suzuhara bragged about the insane profits, while Wajima just laughed, knowing every dark niche has its own hungry buyers. He beckoned him over, demanding to know exactly what he wanted to see. "What about these punks?" Onizuka roared, his voice echoing with pure rage. "Look closely, because these guys are cold-blooded, hardened gangsters." That was the exact moment they caught Onizuka's deadly gaze, and they stood absolutely zero chance. He lunged forward, crushing their throats in an iron grip, while ruthlessly exploiting every single weakness. This was karma finally catching up, a brutal reckoning as he launched another savage assault on Magisa. There was no running away now. They had to face the ultimate judgment the universe had in store. With a twisted grin, he raised his hand and struck Maizawa, sending a piercing scream of agony through the air. Nagisa watched in total horror as Maizawa collapsed, her leg completely severed in the carnage. Nagisa barely parries Suzuhara's lethal strike, while Naoki watches, questioning if he even needs his help anymore. He marched straight toward Onizuka, growling that he'd finally crossed a line he can never come back from. If he chooses to beg for mercy, he'll actually go through with it. Mizuka cuts him off mid-sentence, demanding to know if he's actually serious. Does he honestly believe his pathetic preaching will change a single thing? It's painfully obvious that he's still completely clueless. He hasn't realized just how cruel and twisted this world truly is, and that's exactly why he's about to be taught a brutal lesson. Naoki stammers in disbelief. What on earth is he? Onizuka's devastating strike completely rips their arms from their bodies. Naoki is frozen in pure horror as Onizuka looms over him. Does he finally see that absolute power is the only law? This place is a breeding ground for legends, but it crushes the weak into dust. He swings a heavy strike, declaring that he's absolutely fit to be a mentor. Naoki admits he's right as the impact triggers a massive shockwave, blasting rocks everywhere. Onizuka sneers, asking if he's finally getting exactly what he deserves. Some hero he is, all that hype, and he could barely even nudge him. He demands a real attack, telling him to fight like his very life is on the line. Naoki's eyes go completely wild as he stares him down with pure intensity. He screams for his subordinates to jump in and stop him from moving an inch. Onizuka laughs in his face, asking if he really thinks those guys give a damn about him. Nuki stared them down and shut them down with a cold, hard refusal. Onizuka and the rest of the crew were just looming in the distance. Azuka was baffled, demanding to know if he was really that oblivious. They only kept a loser like him around because he was a convenient tool. In their cutthroat world, that was the only thing that carried any weight. He was supposed to be their problem solver, but he turned into a total arrogant prick. He's a delusional narcissist who actually thinks he's the strongest guy alive. He lashed out at Naoki, screaming at him to make sense for once. In this league, he's nothing but a small-time weakling, but Naoki forced himself up. He stood his ground and admitted the truth just as Izuka hurled him away. He hurls him against the wall, barking out if he's finally ready to surrender. Does he want to rest in peace, or is he ready for another round of hell? He prepares to call upon the overwhelming strength of his hero, Naoki. He screams the name Onizuka with every ounce of breath in his body. Suka tells him to shut his mouth, dismissing him as a total nobody. This annoying brat is nothing more than a low-level criminal. They are standing in the heart of the dreaded Black Grave courts. A blinding flash of dark energy surges up from the cracked earth. The ground itself seems to rise up to deflect the crushing blow. Shock washes over him as the girls suddenly pivot toward the fight. They spun around and let out a massive roar of victory. Melia questioned Nakatani, wondering if there was even a point to this. Was saving him really worth the effort? Our heroes simply said they were classmates in a manner of speaking. Onizuka burst out laughing and started to shout Nakatani's name for the whole world to hear. He grinned ear to ear, announcing his grand arrival. Suzuhara froze in shock and screamed out. She shouted our hero's name as Melia lunged forward. She reached out and completely paralyzed them where they stood. Tsubame looks at Akane, finally realizing the weight of her words. Our hero demands to know why his allies aren't helping, but Onizuka just looms over him. Onizuka mocks him, asking if he's an idiot for not realizing he's about to be slaughtered. Our protagonist stares in horror at his lifeless classmate and the bloodied, broken Maizawa. He turns his gaze away, unable to stomach the carnage. He squeezes his eyes shut for a second before glaring straight at Onizuka. Nakatani questions if the showdown will happen by the wall, while Onizuka lets out a sinister chuckle. He laughs, claiming that maybe taking a life is the only way to wake up from this twisted dream. Our hero freezes, his voice trembling as he repeats, "A dream." Onizuka nods with a wicked grin, confirming that this entire nightmare is just a dream. The dream was over, and he lunged forward with everything he had. He screamed that this fight had to finish right now. Our hero didn't even flinch as he slowly lifted his arm. With a flick of his wrist, he unleashed a devastating blast of hellfire. The crowd watched in absolute shock as the flames engulfed him. He hacked up a mouthful of crimson as his body began to fail. Panic set in as he realized his fantasy was falling apart. His peaceful vision instantly twisted into a horrific, living nightmare. In a gruesome flash, Onizuka's entire hand was ripped clean off. He stared in total denial, refusing to believe his reality was shattering. A blood-curdling shriek rips from his throat as he glares upward in agony. Vile monsters are crawling out of the darkness and closing in on him. Zuhara gasps in total shock, demanding to know what kind of madness this is. She's paralyzed with fear while he desperately tries to make sense of the chaos. Right before their eyes, the monsters begin to mutate and fuse together. The beasts have completely merged with Onizuka, leaving him in a state of pure disbelief. What kind of sick joke is this? He bellows at the top of his lungs. He realizes with a sinking heart that this living nightmare is far from over. He whips around to face our hero with a grim, determined look in his eyes. He declares that their battle is just beginning and they have to keep fighting. Nakatani glares at Onizuka with absolute intensity. A swarm of monsters suddenly devours him whole. Melia screams out to our hero at the top of her lungs. She desperately warns him to stay on his guard. Onizuka lunges forward, unleashing a savage attack, but our hero reacts instantly, dodging the lethal blow. Onizuka bellows out to him with a voice from the grave. He reveals the gruesome truth. His flesh is already rotting. Onizuka lets out a bone-chilling growl as the decay takes over. Melia explains the terrifying power his body can unleash. His body was reaching its absolute limit and couldn't hold out much longer. He knew his life was forfeit, but he still had one final chance to strike. He could drag Nakatani straight to hell with him. Tony squeezed his eyes shut, realizing there was only one way out. He had to pull the trigger. Lin watched the carnage in terror, while Nona just yawned with boredom. Was it finally time for them to step onto the battlefield? She shouted for Lin, demanding that she get over here right now. They needed to witness this epic showdown side by side. Lin's heart raced as she feared the absolute worst for Nuck. With Nakatani in his sights, our hero whipped his gaze to the right. Onizuka screams his name, letting out a savage growl. Snarling with rage, he launches another fierce assault on Nakatani. But once again, our hero stands his ground and blocks the blow. A blinding white light erupts as the earth begins to shatter. Jagged rocks go flying in every single direction. Menace desperately tends to Maizawa's leg while trying to find cover. She blocks the stones as Naoki gets slammed, just as Onizuka prepares his strike. He slices the light clean in half, while Nagisa watches the others in shock. Suzuhara is paralyzed with fear, wondering how this is even possible. The power gap is massive, and despite all his training, he's totally outclassed. Our hero throws up his hand just as Isaka closes the distance. Isaka lunges with a massive paw, snatching his hand in a death grip. He instantly triggers his devastating touch-fire skill. With a burst of heat, Onizuka violently hurls Nakatani across the room. He slams into the wall with a bone-shattering thud, leaving the crowd speechless. Our protagonist is battered and bleeding from the impact, but Onizuka isn't finished yet. His bloodlust is only growing. Manase screams out to Akane, terrified for Nakatani's life. Akane snaps back, telling him to stop stressing. She promises that he's going to make it out of this alive. He triggers his ultimate move, the Black Grave. A sinister, dark light completely swallows Onizuka. He activates his immortality skill, instantly mending his shattered hand. The monster devours Onizuka while he screams in agony, begging for death. Tsubame turns to Akane with a desperate question. Is Onizuka evolving into an even more lethal threat? Nakatani unleashes a devastating strike with everything he's got. Drakonizuka hurls himself downward, targeting our protagonist. He slams into the MC with every ounce of his terrifying strength. Nakatani conjures a massive black shield to tank the hit, but the defense completely shattered under the crushing pressure. Our hero leaps back to avoid the carnage. He dodges the impact and goes straight for Onizuka's throat. He slams into Onizuka mid-air as a massive explosion erupts. A blinding white light swallows him whole as he lets out a primal growl. Nakatani finally hits the ground with a heavy thud. Milius screams that his body has reached its absolute limit. He's not a true vessel, and a desperate Lin begs for the truth. She confirms the worst, explaining that those stolen powers are backfiring. Every single skill he hoarded is now violently rejecting his body. Nina claims that even if she doesn't step in, his own body will eventually shatter from the inside. Malia nods in grim agreement. I was stunned to see him gripped by such overwhelming, paralyzing terror for his own life. Someone points out that Nakatani was just as terrified. Melia shuts them down, insisting his unique skill is in a league of its own. Onizuka's massive frame bulges and grows even more gargantuan. He bellows the protagonist's name with a blood-curdling roar. Both fighters lunge forward, unleashing a devastating collision at the exact same moment. Suddenly, a massive explosion rips through the air. The blast detonates from deep underground as he realizes they actually pulled it off. They really went through with it, leaving every single witness in total shock. As the dust settles, Nakatani finds himself staring at the broken body of Onizuka. He hacks up a spray of blood and glares straight at our protagonist. Our hero stands tall, looming over his fallen enemy like a shadow of death. He declares that the game is over and tells him it's time to stay down for good. Millie rushes toward him, and he turns his intense gaze in her direction. Onizuka sneers with his final breath, calling him an absolute fool for all to see. This twisted nightmare has finally reached its end, and Milia gives a silent nod. Our hero reaches out, and Onizuka lets out a wild laugh, knowing his moment of truth has finally arrived. He's done being a pathetic victim, flashing back to the brutal years when his classmates treated him like trash. In his eyes, cowards are just fuel for the elite, where mindless violence and cruelty dictate the world. Absolute power is a luxury only the strong possess, leaving the helpless with no cards left to play. They have no choice but to roll over and accept their miserable fate. He can beg for mercy until his lungs give out, but as long as he's weak, no one is coming to save him. Every single day was a living hell, proving to him that heroes are nothing but a massive fraud. They're all hypocrites and total shams, putting on a fake performance just to keep people down. To escape this nightmare, he realized there was only one way out. He had to become absolutely unstoppable. Fueled by pure desperation, he snatches a pencil and drives it straight into his own neck. It doesn't matter how they play the game. Victory is the only outcome for him. To claw his way to power, he's willing to step on the necks of the weak. He'll trample his enemies and crush them into absolute nothingness. With a chilling laugh, he vows that he'll never be vulnerable ever again. Onizuka spits out a curse, refusing to lose in this absolute nightmare of a situation. Suddenly, Nakatani unleashes his terrifying absorption skill. In an instant, he rips every single ability right out of Onizuka's body. His cold gaze then shifts directly towards Suzuhara. Looking at Wajima, he wonders if they can actually avoid this same gruesome fate. They're packed with incredible skills, but that won't matter if he keeps thinking this way. Suzuhara was pushed to his absolute limit, teetering on the edge of a total mental collapse. He screamed out in pure desperation, demanding to know what their next move was. Naoki stepped into the light, casually brushing the grime off his shoulders with a cold stare. Suzuhara doubled down, swearing on his life that he wasn't joking around. But Naoki instantly shut him down, cutting through his words like a razor-sharp blade. He told him to keep his mouth shut, bringing up the innocent lives he took in his quest for power. Now he's finally forced to face the brutal consequences of his own dark actions. Whatever happens next, he's going to have to survive this mess all by himself. Nagisa and Saya didn't wait around, immediately making their exit from the scene. Naoki watched them leave as the MC finally turned around to face the music. Ziggy looks around, realizing he's arrived just a moment too late. He's stunned, admitting they actually cracked the case exactly as he expected. They managed to solve the mystery without him ever having to step in. Naoki screams at him in a panic, but Ziggy just flashes a wicked grin. He smiles, knowing the Imperial Palace is actually a massive dungeon. An elf hides his true identity, disguised as a frail and withered old man. As he descends the stairs, he questions what he's even doing there. Autumn is one lucky girl to be using an old-timer like him for her dirty work. He channels his power and blasts the door open with a surge of magic. He steps forward, venturing deep into a dark and endless corridor. He demands to know if it's the truth, and Akane swears there's no mistake. She witnessed the horror firsthand, leaving him with no other choice. He chooses to trust her word as she reveals a chilling secret. Deep beneath this very palace lies a hidden, forgotten dungeon. That's where the dark truth about the hero Rei is buried. She smirks and asks, "Pretty intriguing, don't you think? What kind of twisted secret is the Empire desperately trying to bury? Even the wisest scholars are in the dark." And he calls it a total tragedy. As a key player in that original pact, he's tied directly to this mess. There's no turning back now. He knows exactly what's at stake. He spots a figure in the shadows and admits he's completely stunned. He never expected to run into a single soul in a desolate place like this. Suddenly, Prime Minister Dennis steps forward with a cold greeting. He tries to brush him off, claiming he's in a massive hurry. He's got no time to waste, so he asks if he could just step aside and let him through already. But then, Dennis's face twists into something sinister. He leans in and asks, "Is that truly the choice you want to make?" Without a second thought, he gives a firm, defiant yes. A wicked smirk creeps across the Prime Minister's face as he speaks. He nodded, finally grasping the gravity of the situation. With a cold apology, she flicked her finger and sliced the elf clean in half. He confessed that he had absolutely no idea who leaked the secret info. But despite the lead, it seemed like the whole plan was a total bust. Our heroes finally stood before the massive gates of the looming fortress. The commander turned his head, refusing to acknowledge the situation. Nakatani screamed out to Ziggy at the top of her lungs. She demanded to know if this was really how things were meant to go down. Everything was supposed to be finished by now, she thought. But then her eyes locked onto the dark entrance of the castle. A piercing scream tore through the air as pure terror gripped his soul. He was prepared to slaughter the heroes and abandon his own life. The bandit reached out with a wicked grin and snatched him up. He hoisted the poor guy high into the air by his skull. The horrifying realization finally hit him. So that's what happened to him. He locked eyes with Izuka, demanding to know the truth. He taunted him, asking if he'd finally mastered his overwhelming power. But the MC didn't back down, meeting him with a lethal glare. He just smirked, flicking his cigar away with total indifference. Then he leaned in and told him he had the most beautiful eyes. With a wild look in his eyes, he dives off the cliff, declaring that a gaze like that is legendary. True strength and a killer instinct. That's what defines a real warrior. He connects with a devastating strike that rattles his opponent to the core. Nakatani is blown back, leaving Lin completely speechless. He masterfully twirls his blade, showing off his insane sword skills. In a flash, he maneuvers through the defense and slips right past him. He sets his sights on the MC and lunges forward for another brutal attack. Ziggy taunts them all, sticking out his tongue with a wicked grin. Caught off guard, he gasps and shouts for the MC. Akane glares at the scene just as a blade rips through Nakatani's chest. Ziggy lets out a chilling laugh, mocking the entire situation. He expertly twirls his blade, preparing for the kill. A look of pure, unhinged madness flashes across his face. He launches himself forward like a predator on the hunt. He unleashes a relentless storm of lightning-fast strikes. Malia squeezes her eyes shut, unable to witness the carnage. Nina and Nona are frozen in place, absolutely captivated by the scene. The power surges as Roy stands there, trembling with nerves. Melia cries out, desperate to understand the true purpose. The ultimate goal is revealed as a void-like black circle. A glowing magic circle suddenly erupted beneath her feet. Her eyes locked onto him while Naoki watched the brutal clash unfold. Ziggy barked out, "What's wrong with him?" as he struggled to find his resolve. He had to summon the killer instinct right now, or he'd never finish the job. He lunged straight for our hero with blinding speed, screaming at the top of his lungs that he'd be the one to end him. Lin cried out to him, desperate to jump into the heat of battle. She was ready to back him up, but he gave her a sharp look and a signal. He raised his hand firmly, signaling that her help wasn't needed. He turned his gaze toward Milia, who met him with a chilling smile. He locked eyes with his foe and declared he was ready for anything. Suddenly, a sinister black aura erupted around our hero. He lunged forward and slammed a devastating blow right into Ziggy. The impact was so massive that a thick cloud of dust exploded into the air. Minasi trembled in pure terror, but Ziggy just let out a chilling laugh. He shouted that this was exactly the kind of thrill he'd been waiting for. To him, there's no greater joy than a brutal, no-holds-barred brawl. Unleashing his full power, he launched a savage assault on our protagonist, but our hero moved like lightning, narrowly evading the strike as Ziggy just kept howling with laughter, his face twisted in pure madness. Milia observed them closely, her mind spinning with deep, calculated thoughts. He was stunned that this guy crushed Onizuka and asked about the Black Wolf's power. He questioned if the commander was just as strong, leaving her completely shocked. He was clueless, thinking there was no way they'd follow such a shady old man. But his raw strength is the real reason they're forced to obey his every command. To be honest, she hadn't seen him act this way in what felt like forever. When he enters this state, he won't stop until his victim is utterly broken. Lin sprinted over, demanding to know if this was why he joined forces with the MC. She confirmed the truth just as Naoki prepared to let out a massive shout. He screamed at the top of his lungs that this man was the one who ended Onizuka. He knows there has to be a reason for him being here. He lets out a wild laugh, screaming about how much fun he's having. This is it, the main character's ultimate absorption skill. He stands there paralyzed, his entire body trembling in pure shock. He collapses to the dirt, hacking and gasping for air. Ziggy looms over him, wearing a look of pure satisfaction. Our hero stares back, his eyes filled with absolute terror. Ignoring the fear, Ziggy casually reaches out and grabs the cigar. Nakatani speaks up, confirming that he's the one responsible. Ziggy finally admits it. He's throwing in the towel and giving up. A chilling smirk creeps across his face as he throws his hands up in the air. Our hero is completely stunned, but Ziggy just shrugs, claiming there's no bad blood between them. He's just a man on a mission. But as the MC staggers to his feet, he demands to know what kind of job this is. Ziggy sparks a cigar and coolly explains that his gift is unlike anything the world has ever seen. His power is truly limitless, a terrifying reality that leaves other heroes drowning in total despair. He can literally snatch any ability he wants. Talk about a total nightmare to fight. He gives the MC a mockingly friendly pat on the shoulder and offers a fake apology. He insists he doesn't actually have a grudge against our protagonist. But hey, a man's gotta eat. And if he doesn't work, he doesn't get paid. And his latest assignment? To hit our hero with a devastating, soul-crushing curse. He demands to know, is this really a curse? Ziggy confirms it, explaining that this curse ignites when emotions explode. It's a dark trade, swapping your sanity for power that defies humanity. And this is the exact skill he just ripped away from him. Even though the user gains godlike strength, the madness won't stop. This bloodlust won't end until the enemy is completely annihilated. Either the foe is crushed or the user dies, and he's already a monster. He doesn't want this gift, because if it triggers, the consequences are fatal. Even the girls become expendable, turning his own strength against him. The trap is set, and he's left reeling from this devastating uphill battle. His twisted plan with the curse finally comes to light, but it's going to cost him the loyalty of his own black wolves. He lets out a mocking laugh, calling the guy a complete moron for even trying to challenge the boss. Did he seriously just punch me in the face? He cackles, while our hero just lets out a long, exhausted sigh. He demands to know if the Empire really had the nerve to send a guy like Ziggy Lag after him. While he continues to laugh, Naoki screams at the top of his lungs, "Why the hell did you stop? They need to put an end to this idiot's games immediately." He glares directly at our protagonist and snaps that he couldn't care less about the consequences. He's absolutely desperate to attack, ready to tear his opponent apart. He questions if that powerful skill was actually handed over like they said. All he needs to do is apply a little more pressure to make him lose everything. His power spirals out of control as Naoki collapses onto the dirt. Slamming into the earth, he curses on Izuka's name with his fading breath. Ziggy just sneers, calling him a complete and utter moron. This deadly curse only triggers when things get truly desperate. A pathetic weakling like him stands zero chance of resisting its power. He cackles, mocking Naoki for ever thinking he could win, leaving the boy paralyzed with shock. Ziggy looms over him, spitting that if he had used even an ounce of logic, he'd realize this curse is about to absolutely shatter his sanity. If that skill unleashes right now, there's no way out for anyone. They're trapped, and this power will strip away every last bit of his freedom. He questioned himself. Was he really asking for the impossible? All he wanted was a hero who actually used his brain for once. If fools like this were leading the Empire, their entire future was in serious jeopardy. Naoki's blood boiled with rage, while Ziggy just mocked him for his pathetic expression. Just as Ziggy prepared to crush this insolence, Naoki screamed at him to shut it down. Roy finally intervened, telling them to quit it as he stood up and raised his hands in surrender. Naoki let out a wild shout, claiming he finally saw through the entire twisted game. Was this the master plan all along? All that garbage talk about noble titles? It was nothing but a trap to lure them into his clutches. And Ziggy just smirked. Ziggy sneered that if the guy were even remotely useful, that might actually be the case. He locked eyes with our hero and questioned his true motives. Naoki leaped to his feet, screaming in total disbelief. Ziggy pressed him for an answer, demanding to know his next move. Does he actually plan on joining the ranks of the corrupt nobility? Our MC shut him down instantly, confirming he'd never sell his soul like that. Just like that, an alliance is born, and he's already unlocking a massive horde of new skills. As he turns to leave, Melia stops him dead in his tracks with a chilling question. Did he honestly think she'd just let him walk away that easily? Suddenly, the heavens crack open and the sky plunges into pitch-black darkness. Pure terror grips the crowd as they stare up at the nightmare unfolding above. She gasped in total shock, demanding to know what she was looking at. He shouted in a panic, "What the hell is even happening right now?" Ziggy just flashed a smug grin and asked if they had messed with the wrong person. He joked about stepping on someone's tail, but she shot him a look that could kill.